Welcome to City Council meeting, Tuesday, August the 7th, 2018 work session. I wasn't there because I've been to the Summerfest beginning ceremonies at the Bountiful Davis Art Center, but I'm sure it went well. And this is the regular session. I was thinking my wife maybe sent me flowers, but I think it has another purpose. So we'll wait. Okay, we'll wait on that a little bit. This is a nice group here today, and we thankful for all the city council who are attending, and we have I think we have quite a bit on our plate tonight, and we appreciate all of you who have come to participate or listen. We'll begin this evening by having a Pledge of Allegiance, and we've asked Will Smith if he would come and lead us in a Pledge of Allegiance. Thanks, Will.
Will the audience please rise? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated.
Thank you, Will. Done very, very nicely. And he was asked about 5 minutes ago, so thanks, Will. We're privileged to have a prayer from our Father Rene from St. Olaf's Church, and he's been here before, and we certainly love and appreciate him being here in our community. Father Rene, please.
In the name of the Father, of the Son, of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Words from the book of Proverbs, chapter 3, verses 5 and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your hearts, and learn not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he make your paths straight. Blessed are you, Lord God of all creation, whose goodness fills our hearts with joy. Blessed are you who have brought us together this evening in the City Council meeting. We ask you to bless each one of us, bless our community. We ask you to bless each member of the council, grant them knowledge and discerning heart and minds, that they may be able to craft ordinances that promote justice, peace, harmony in our community, that will glorify your name. We ask this through the name of Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
We now have a time for public comment, and that public comment time is anyone who wishes to come to the rostrum there and to take no more than 2 minutes. In fact, we have a timer, and we do this for a maximum total of 10 minutes at the beginning of each and every council meeting now. We want to remind those that we will be having a public hearing later on the truth in taxation that is about. So if you want to wait, you're welcome to wait till the public hearing in order to make a comment. And I'll turn that time now to any of you who would like to come up and spend a couple of minutes at the microphone.
Hi. Hey, I was just wondering if Bountiful Golf Course would consider giving Bountiful High students free practice time. I know other schools, high schools, get free practice at their assigned golf courses, but Bountiful Ridge doesn't, and they have to pay every time they go up to practice. So that's just an issue that I wanted to bring up and see what we can do about that. Thanks.
Thank you. others? Please. Oh, and by the way, if you'd say your name and where you're from.
Yes, I'm Debbie Miller. I'm from Bountiful, and I just would like to encourage the council as they consider the text amendment for the zoning so that they would be able to locate the Liberty Hills Academy in the proposed building that is the White House. I believe that this school will be an asset to Bountiful, to the Main Street project that has been coming together beautifully. It meets with the master plan that you have stated. I've read the zonings and I've read the master plan, and I know Liberty Hills. It's a success story in the lives of many children, and it would be very heartbreaking to see it not have the opportunity to be as part of our Bountiful. And I think it would be a missed opportunity if we were to reject them at this time when they have the chance to open the doors of Main Street to this wonderful school that serves our community and will continue to serve our community for many years to come. We have personal success stories that we'd be happy to share. We don't have the time right now, but I just would like to respectfully appreciate the council's taking into advisement this very important issue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Lewis and the gentlemen and ladies of the Bountiful City Council, thank you for this privilege that I have to address you tonight. My name is Jared Vance. I live at 128 West, 1500 North, Bountiful, Utah, and I've lived here all my life. I have been going to Liberty Hills Academy for 4 years, and we love attending this school because it has wonderful teachers that care about you and your education. Students are drawn to this school from a variety of locations, including Willard, Lehigh, Roy, Bountiful, Farmington, and Layton. Bountiful is an ideal gathering place for these students, and our school offers a tremendous opportunity for a focused education. Having a school in this building would bring more people down to Bountiful's Main Street. My older sister would be really excited for our school if we were there because you would have more opportunity to go clothes shopping after school. A school is a place where kids like myself go to get an education. At Liberty Hills Academy, we are taught to have good character, to be responsible citizens. We are expected to get our homework done, to set goals, strive for excellence, set high standards, be kind to others, and treat people and their property with respect. At our school, we are taught to be good citizens and we work for the betterment of our community. Liberty Hills Academy has helped the community by generously letting other groups use the building. They have invited my choir that I perform with to rehearse at their building. They have held Meet the Candidates at nights at their building for the betterment of their community. Thank you again for this opportunity to address you tonight.
Thank you. Very impressive. Thank you. Yes, sir.
My name is Alex Jackson, and I'm a student that attends Liberty Hills, and I'd like to read you some thoughts that I wrote down about why I love my school. And I'm from West Bountiful. Liberty Hills matters to me. I care about it. Every time I go to school, I'm met with a smiling face. When I'm there, I'm taught not only the normal subjects, but also principles. I've gone to this school for 3 years, and I'm better for it. In fact, I'm my best at Liberty Hills. It brings out the best in me and the best in others. I look forward to school. I dread summer. When I'm at school, I feel better. Just the feeling it brings is so amazing. I'm friends with all my teachers and even other classes. Everyone is friends there. This environment is extremely welcoming. It doesn't change, so when I have a hard time, I can go back to school and it will be the same it's been. That kind of stability is very comforting. Liberty Hills is a good school. I know it, and I love my school. It's worth saving. I know that this school is important and needs to succeed. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Suzanne Bates, a resident of Bountiful. I just wanted to speak to you quickly about the proposal of having Liberty Hills Academy buy the building on Main Street. I've lived here my entire life. I've watched the restaurants and each business as it has come and gone from Bountiful Main Street. The ones that have stuck around, each and every one of those businesses, I've been aware of. And the interesting part about Main Street is it's really a special place. Not everyone realizes how special it is, but it's special, in fact, enough to me that I've lived just off of Bountiful Main Street purposely because I like that area so much. I have 3 children that were bullied out of the public school system to the point that there needed to be another option for them. And that option is Liberty Hills. It's where they've thrived and been able to overcome challenges and are different kids than they were before. The ironic part about Liberty Hills buying this building and the amendment it would take for this to take place is that it really would open up nightlife for the building afterwards because the school gets out at 2:30. Having others come and use the building facilities is something I can promise you that will happen. And for this consideration, I'm grateful. Thanks.
Thank you very much. With that, our public comment period is over. We're certainly thankful for all of you that were brave and stood up and spoke. We'll now have council reports, and Richard, we'll start with you down at the end there.
Nothing to report, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you. John Mark.
He stole my words. No, I have no report.
Okay. And Beth.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have anything to report this time. Just came back from vacation, though, so.
Yep.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Yes, welcome back. And
Mayor,
Chris.
I'd just like to report on the concert in the parks.
Please.
Last Friday night, we had an all-faith concert by 3 different groups in the park. It was beautiful. The weather was wonderful. The musical numbers were praise and uplifting, and it was a very enjoyable Friday night. Summerfest is this weekend, so there won't be a program in the park. But a week from this coming Friday, there will be the Michael McLean and John Batdorf, which are contemporary musicians. And the one that I can't wait for is on the 24th of August, Endless Summers, the Beach Boys. But it's not the real Beach Boys. It's going to be as close as we can probably get here. And I promise the band that I will bring my 57th Thunderbird and we'll park it in front.
Beautiful. Beautiful. You do that every time you get a chance.
I might even give rides.
You do that every time you get a chance. Sometimes he parks it the wrong way right out here in front of City Hall.
I think he's just a little proud of it.
He's just a little proud of it. Kimberlyn.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll just say for anybody who lives near Viewmont or Bountiful High School, there's a meeting on August 16th, next Wednesday? Thursday, thanks, at 6, to just discuss parking issues for people who live just right near those high schools.
And that's all?
Just to clarify, it's a week from Thursday on the 16th.
A week from...
Oh, not this, yeah, right, it's not this Thursday, the 16th, which is a week from Thursday.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, and Kimberlyn, we'll leave it with you to talk about the Youth Council.
Great. We have 2 representatives here tonight, Lena Rucker and Kenley Dandurand. Will you girls come on up? Okay, here they are. These are 2 of our fantastic Youth Council members here to give us a report.
Hello, I'm Kenley Dandurand.
Hi, I'm Lena Rucker. So I will be reporting first on the Bountiful Parade. That was very, very fun and successful. We walked in the parade and we handed out candy and popsicles to the kids, and that was really fun. I hope that we got a couple new members who will hopefully like to apply next year, and Lena will carry on.
The next morning after that, we got to help out the Lions Club with a breakfast. We cracked lots of eggs and we cooked them. It was a really great time. They thanked us. The Lions Club came and gave us ice cream for helping them that morning. And tomorrow night, we're planning on handing out pamphlets or papers for that meeting Kendall mentioned for the Bountiful and Viewmont schools and the parking issues.
Right, so I think you have little things that go on the doorknobs, is that right? Little elastic things that you'll attach, so thank you for all of your good work.
Thank you.
That's really nice of you, thank you. I might mention I wasn't at the earlier meeting because I was at Summerfest, and we have a group from Taiwan and a group from Hungary, and they are just the most beautiful young people. So you're going to get a chance on Friday and Saturday to go down to the park and see them dance. And there's some other cultural groups that are more Utah-based that are about other countries, and they will also be performing. But those costumes from Taiwan and Hungary are really impressive, and they're just wonderful people. And we appreciate, I don't know if we have anyone here that is a host family. Do we have anybody here that's a host family to them? Thank you. Thank you. That is not necessarily a labor of love. I think when you end up with those folks in your home, that is really a privilege. So we thank those residents who take them in during the time they're here.
Mayor Lewis?
Yes.
We need to go back to item number 3. We have some minutes that need to be considered.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. We have not approved the minutes from, from July 10th, 2018. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve those as printed.
Second?
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Gary, for reminding us. We're going to turn some time now for a minute to Jacob Fordham for a little presentation. Thanks, Jacob.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor and Council, I'd like to invite up Bill Albright and his wife, Dixie, if she wants to come. She doesn't have to. Council, Mayor, Bill has been our public defender here in the city for 22 years, and he's done this service for defendants who are charged with crimes who can't afford legal counsel, and he's just provided excellent service to the city for that entire time. He's also a resident of Bountiful for more than that. I don't know how long, 32 years, and has performed that as a service, giving the city a discount and working with us. And you know, I came to work here about 2 years ago now, and Bill was here, and I can't tell you how highly I think of him and how highly I working with him was just a great experience for that entire time. And it really really is something that the city should be thankful for and accommodate Bill. And I think we have a little something for him.
We do. We do.
Just say thank you for that lengthy service. So thanks, Bill, and thanks, Dixie, for having us on all the time.
Thank you.
Yeah, over the 22 years, I see some people that I've actually
That's good.
Yeah. The only way you last 22 years in the criminal system is to work with just wonderful people. From those that are in the clerk's office to those that are in the prosecutor's office, our professional police officers. It was a privilege and an honor to represent Bountiful and the people of the community. And Mayor Lewis and other members of the council, thank you very much for this. And I was just hoping, too, you might consider waiving fees for 65-year-olds at the golf course.
Yep,
That's all. Only if you're on the high school.
Only if you're on the high school golf team, yeah, there you go. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Albright. We appreciate all of your service. We'd like the next item is to consider approval of weekly expenditures greater than $1,000 were spent in June 1st and July 2nd, 9th, 10th, 16th, 17th, 23rd, and 24th of 2018. And I'll look for a motion.
Nobody wants to touch that amount of money.
I know, yes, there's too much there, too many days.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the weekly expenditure reports as outlined by the mayor.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that's good. I don't know if we've had that many numbers in a row.
No.
There for a long time. With that, our next item, we're going to turn time over to Gary. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We appreciate the time tonight to be able to discuss property tax and the reasons that we're considering it this year. As you'll hear a little bit later tonight, it's been 18 years since the city has raised its property tax rate. And there are a couple of things that have prompted the discussion this year. It's something that I think the council and the staff have been discussing for a period of time. But tonight specifically, we wanted to talk about a couple of some legislative action that's affected the city financially, and then some additional needs in the city related to public safety. We've had a difficult time in the last few years with cities and counties' relationship with the state legislature, and the feeling from the legislature that not allowing local leaders to lead. And we have fortunately had very good representation in the city with regards to the legislature. Nevertheless, we've found it increasingly difficult and having to deal with issues that impact local ability to control our own destiny. And this is, yeah, not working. So do you want to hit the button for me? Pull the lever, Kronk. Thanks.
Wrong lever.
Wrong lever.
Wrong lever. Couple of examples of legislative overreach this year that were concerning. Senate Bill 189 is an example. That was a bill that was passed that preempts our ability to say no to small cell wireless facilities. Now when we say small cell, that's talking about the range, not necessarily the size. These facilities can be up to as large as a refrigerator. And what this bill requires is that if a vendor, Verizon, AT&T, somebody wants to come into the city and use our light poles or our right-of-way, we have to allow them to put those facilities. We can't negotiate fees. We can't negotiate locations. That was fairly concerning. Senate Bill 167, food truck regulations. This is the third or fourth in a series of regulations that preempts our ability, for example, to tell a food truck, to require a food truck to tell us where on a property they're going to be located. So we don't know if they're blocking accesses or things like that. We can only enforce it after the fact. Senate Bill 243, this is the Inland Port Authority that's been in the news quite a bit. It essentially continues a precedent of taking away local land use authority and investing it in a legislative-led effort. Takes away all local zoning for the area. The original bill that has been since amended took 100% of the RDA revenue away from the area. Minimal local representation. This affected only Salt Lake County, but again, this is now the second bill in the last 10 years that we've seen that has taken away local government's ability to determine what our communities look like. HB 256, Electric Service District, this was a bill that would have preempted prior agreements for provision of service within your own municipal boundary for power. That one did not pass. Senate Bill 120 passed a prohibition on imposing certain fees. Billboard amendments preempts local land use ability to stop the relocation of billboards under many circumstances. And then one that was especially frustrating, and there's Beth Holbrook, Councilwoman Holbrook, who is the current president of the League of Cities and Towns, testifying on behalf of cities next to the sponsor of the bill. This bill would have given the legislature the power to review all local laws and powers. Anything that the council passed could have been reviewed by a special committee. That one did not pass. And then finally, the issue that prompted our discussion tonight was Senate Bill 235. This is the homeless shelter funding amendments. What this bill does is, this law now, what it does is it takes away 1.8% of the local option sales tax. This is the sales tax that the city councils in the state passed for their own communities. It takes 1.8% of that, of the population portion of that, puts it into a statewide fund to be able to pay for the public safety needs in communities that have homeless shelters. Rather than taking the money from the state general fund, and especially in a year with large state surplus, what it does is it takes that money away from us, which is money that we use for our roads, for our own public safety, for our parks, any general fund services. That money will be appropriated every year. It'll be beginning for us a $75,000 hit each year. Will grow with inflation. I think it's important to point out that we're sympathetic to the plight of the homeless as a city. I'm repeating what I know the council feels, and in my conversations with you, it's not that we don't think that's a problem that needs to be addressed. It's rather the method that the state used to reach into local government coffers and take that money. But that leaves a hole for services that we need to provide. So that was the basis of the conversation. We then started to talk about and realize that we have some significant public safety needs that the chief will talk about in a few minutes. This time I'd like to turn the time over to Galen Rasmussen, our assistant city manager, who's going to talk about how property taxation works and truth in taxation works for the benefit that those that are here and might be unfamiliar with that process.
Thank you, Gary. Hopefully, if I'm a little closer, it'll work. If not, I'll have Tyson advance the slides for me. We thought we would take a little bit and talk about the property tax process just in general, since there is kind of a complicated process and there are many players involved. I just have summarized those players up here on this slide. The county recorder, many of the functions are operated by the county, but the state tax commission also gets involved for properties that span counties that are primarily like utilities, airlines, that type of thing, that are still taxed, but they are valued by the state since they cross over boundaries. The county assessor and county recorder, auditor, and treasurer have their roles that are listed up there for your view there. And each of the taxing entities sets a budget, which we have done on June 12th, and then they request a certain amount of tax revenue. The county recorder, auditor, and treasurer work together, and the county auditor provides a certified tax rate that we then equate to the budgeted revenue that we're asking for. And then after the budget is adopted, the cities or any of these taxing entities that are listed here deliver the services to the citizens. There's a few key terms that will be important to know in this discussion. Fair market value. When you get your property tax notice, you'll notice there is a fair market value listed at the top, and that is based in Utah Constitution, that is assessed by the county assessor, and the tax that you pay on that is actually based on a exemption that you get. A primary residence gets a 45% tax break, and then the resulting amount is actually taxed. This doesn't apply to secondary residences or businesses. And tonight, the reason why we're here for this secondary hearing is that Bountiful City is asking for an additional amount of money that is over the certified tax rate to pay for some things that are very specifically needed. One is the recoup of the $75,000 tax amount that is being withheld by the state, and then $225,000 that is for police services. And
if I could jump in there, Galen,
sure,
if you don't mind. One of the key point of truth in taxation is that it does not allow a city to collect any additional revenue if property values go up. So if the property values in the city raise, what happens is the city has to decrease its tax rate. And over time, a rate will decrease unless the community either decreases in value or the council raises the property tax rate. So increases in property value do not result in increased revenue for the city.
We'll go over a simplified example of that in just a minute that will illustrate that. The property tax, as you might expect, is a general revenue that benefits general government services, and some of those services are listed here. Things that you see in the community, police services, our engineering department, snow plowing, fire and emergency medical services, and some of the things that you don't see that are behind the scenes that are administrative in nature. But there's quite a few things that the property tax goes into the funding sources that go to provide these essential services. Now here's just an illustration, just in simple form, of how the valuation and assessment portion of the property tax system works in Utah. There is a tax base upon which the property tax is based, a property value which is assessed by the county or the tax commission depending on where it's located, as I mentioned before. There's a tax rate that is set, and what we'll talk about tonight is just a single entity, just for illustration, since there are many taxing entities that make up your total tax bill. And then there's a property tax due that is the value of your property multiplied by the tax rate. Here's that simplified example. Say we have 4 properties in the city, and they're all valued at $100,000. The tax that we would assume in this example that we would need to provide services would be $1,000. As you can see, each one of those properties are listed, and then we would take the amount of money that's needed, the $1,000 budgeted revenue, divide that by the property value in total, and then it gives a tax rate that's then applied to each of those properties to give the $1,000. Now, if we have an increase, like we were just talking about, that goes through and applies the same basic methodology. The $1,000 that we still need divided by an increased property tax value, but a lowering of the rate, and then that applied to the value of each of those properties to get the same $1,000 in revenue. And since not every value of property is going to be the same, here's an illustration of how that's affected by different properties' values. And the same process is followed, $1,000 in revenue divided by the property value to give a new rate applied to each of those properties to deliver the same $1,000. Now, this is the inverse relationship that Mr. Hill was talking about between the property value. So if it goes up, the tax rate in a certified tax rate issue goes down so that the same tax comes into the city that they got in the previous year. And if the property values go down, then the rate would go up, but the same tax is delivered. Now, just like everyone else's budget, the city's budget is affected by inflation. And so here's an illustration of 2 time periods and what the effects of inflation have done to $1,000. So in the first year of illustration, 2008, $1,000 did provide $1,000 worth of services. But now that same $1,000, because things are more expensive, we'd have to only have $868 that we could deliver services. And so that additional amount of money has to come from somewhere to maintain the same level of services in the city. Some have asked about additional revenue that comes into the city from property taxes. This is an illustration of where there is a process for receiving money for new homes or improved homes that have a difference in their values that way. That's called new growth, and this slide illustrates that a little bit. It is not designed to cover inflation, but it is designed to give the city some incremental revenue to provide services to these new properties or improved properties. And turn the time over to Tyson.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I wanted to just take a few minutes and discuss some of the financial aspects of this property tax increase, and really, bottom line, how does it affect the average homeowner in Bountiful? So, as we've been discussing about property taxes, Bountiful City isn't the only taxing entity within our property tax bill. So, for the 2017 property tax levy, this is the distribution of all of the different taxing entities that make up our property taxes. So you can see that Davis County is 62% of our property tax bill.
School district.
Thank you. Davis County School District. And so they make up 62%. The Davis County itself makes up another 21% of our property taxes, and then Bountiful City itself receives 7% of the property taxes. Then obviously you can see that there are various other districts that provide services to us that, again, tax us through the property tax levy. So this is the distribution for the 17 levy. So just quickly, Bountiful City has the second lowest individual tax rate in Davis County. We've been, as we mentioned, it's been 18 years since Bountiful City itself has raised their tax rate. And because of that, it puts us right down there at the bottom of the list in Davis County. We are also the third lowest combined tax rate in Davis County. So as I mentioned, there are multiple taxing entities within your property tax bill that make up your combined tax rate. And even adding in all of those entities, we are the third lowest in Davis County. So, bottom line, the city is looking to increase their property taxes by $300,000, and as has been mentioned, we're looking to replace the $75,000 that will be taken because of Senate Bill 235 for the homeless shelters, and then we want to add an additional 2 police officers, and that's both their salaries and benefits and the equipment for those 2 police officers. So that's what the city is requesting the $300,000 for, and here is kind of a breakdown of how that $340,000 increase in property taxes would affect the typical property owner, and resident, and business owner. So with a $340,000 market value home in Bountiful, and that's what the Davis County Assessor's Office is saying is the average home value in Bountiful for a single family residence. So on a $340,000 home, this increase would actually be $19.54. So $1.36 per month. If you're a business, as Galen mentioned, you don't have that primary residence exemption, so you'd be paying $35.53 annually, or $2.96 per month. So overall, Bountiful's tax rate would increase only 1.3% with this proposed $300,000 increase, and this is obviously based off of the assumption that all of the other taxing entities would not raise their rates at the same time. Obviously, we can't control whether the other taxing entities raise their rates, and they would have to go through the same process of truth and taxation and do a public hearing to do so. But if everything stayed status quo, it would be just a 1.3% increase overall. So with this proposed increase, where would we sit ranking compared to the other Davis County cities? So with the $300,000 increase, we would still be the second lowest city in Davis County, based off of our rate. It would be with the proposed rate, it would be $165 per year on a $340,000 home. So that helps to fund all of your services like police and snow plowing and all of the general fund services that we provide. So just lastly, I just wanted to quickly touch base on how inflation has affected the buying power of our property tax over the years. We last raised our property taxes in 2001, and since then, the inflation has caused our buying power to go from around $2 million to about $1.5 million. So we've actually lost $500,000 in buying power just through inflation over this time frame. So obviously, the $300,000 is not trying to recoup this inflation. It's to provide the same level of service and recoup the $75,000 that was taken through the Senate bill, and then also to hire 2 new additional police officers. But I just wanted to illustrate how our buying power has actually decreased over this time frame. And with that, I'll turn the time over to Chief Ross.
Mayor, members of the council, I know that I should be facing you and talking to you in city council meeting, and I've always respected that. But I feel like you know what I'm going to talk about. We've discussed this. We've been talking about this potentially. The situation's been unfolding for a few years now, and we've talked in detail about why I'm here. I feel strongly that I should be talking to our residents. I think that for those that don't know me, and hopefully many of you do in a positive way, my name's Tom Ross. I am your police chief. I've been your police chief for 12 and a half years. I've been an officer here in Bountiful for 30 years. I know this community. I have spent more time in this community than most people ever have, and it's as close to my heart as my family and my friends. And when we're talking about Bountiful, anything that's said, whether I just hear people having conversations or they're talking to me, I adamantly want to defend and talk about all the positive things about Bountiful. And yet here we are tonight talking about one of the things that we all hate the most, and that's taxes going up. I'm no different than anybody here. And when I hear talk about them going to be paying more in taxes, just naturally the hair kind of raises up on the back of my neck, and I'm thinking the same thing everyone else thinks. There's got to be a better way they can spend their money. They've got to have money hidden somewhere that they can pull out, and they don't need to raise my taxes. And I've thought long and hard about what do I say to you as your police chief to help you understand what we have done internally in our department, not only just the 12 and a half years that I've been chief, but for the 30 years that I've worked here, to ensure that we are doing things at the best efficiency and effectiveness for the cost that we all pay in taxes to earn that trust. I've delivered a lot of difficult messages in 30 years. You can imagine some of the things that a police officer gets involved in. And yet I've been more worried about this conversation over the last couple of weeks than even the most difficult conversations that none of us want to have. And I think the difference is that even in those very intimate, painful situations, we're close to each other. You can see in my eyes. You know that I'm feeling as much as I can feel of the pain that you're going through. And you know that my word is my bond, and what I'm saying is the truth. Because at the end of the day, that's the relationship that I think must exist in order for us to earn that trust and respect. So I'm facing you because I want you to see me, and I want you to be able to look in my eyes, and then at the end of the day or the end of this process, if you have concerns about what we're doing, absolutely ask me. If you're not convinced that we have been trying to make do with what we have, then you vote the way you feel you need to vote, or talk to us and ask those questions, and all I can do is the best that we can do to answer that. But let's talk a little bit about policing in the state of Utah and in this country. One of the other roles I serve in is I've been president of the Utah Chiefs of Police Association for 4 years now. There has been an epidemic of negativity towards law enforcement since 2014. Some of that we own. Some of that falls on us. Much of it does not. But over the course of these last 4 to 5 years, there's been a significant impact on our ability to recruit, hire, and retain law enforcement officers. And even though Bountiful has many positive things to offer a law enforcement officer for a career, it still doesn't take away from the same types of negativity that we are still impacted by, even with a community that is very supportive of the police, and I've always felt that. When you look at the recruitment efforts, you're going to see some numbers here tonight that I'm talking about being in a hole. I'm not talking about the 36 officers that we are allotted to have in having those officers working here. Only 20% of the time in the last 6 years have we been fully staffed. We have been dropping into levels that we're pulling people out of assignments. We're putting administrators on the street. We're putting detectives on patrol in order to provide the most basic and necessary response needs, which are those priority calls that you need us there in minutes. And we still are there in minutes. We didn't make anybody suffer while we went through this battle and pushing, well, you got to give us more people or we can't be there in 4 minutes. No, we pulled and made adjustments and changes, and we're still getting to your homes in 4 minutes. And that's important. But that's been our philosophy. That's been our goal, is to do the best we can do with whatever resources we have. When I started in 1988, actually I started in 86 part-time, there were 500 candidates filled the Bountiful High cafeteria for part-time positions. The last testing go-around that we went through, we had 33. We have been unable to fill vacancies off a single test. I don't know, Ed's our assistant chief, but we're going through multiple testing cycles to fill vacancies that already exist. And yet Bountiful is still a very desired place to work as a law enforcement agency. The 4 officers that we've been down most recently are for the right reasons. One retired, 22 years as a sergeant. One's been activated in the military, serving our country. One I let go because of their performance and not living up to the standards of our city and our organization. And then one that left us to go to another agency because of a belief that they would pay more money and had better retirement benefit. So as we talk about the officers, here's the staffing. This shows what's been happening. You can look at that. This is since 2011, and you can see the trend has been getting worse. I know the conversations I had with Gary Hill, our city manager, even 3 years ago, as we were starting to see some significant changes, we wanted to believe and we're hopeful that this is a short-term negative impact, that we can work our way out of this. There have been plenty of cities and counties that have raised taxes in the last 3 years for law enforcement. We were not the first ones in. And we intentionally and specifically have made changes and adjustments trying to accommodate this. We've shuttered our reserve program, our part-time officers, in order to staff our full-time officers. We've cut back our overtime by $100,000 in trying to be able to keep people and recruit. We have done the things that we need to do to try to attract people here. But with making some adjustments to make sure that we were compensating competitively, the other biggest issue that our officers had is the amount of pressure we were applying for them to work overtime. Every day we are filling overtime. The officers that left us in 2017, we had 4 officers that left around the same time. That was before we made a couple adjustments in pay that we have absorbed through cuts in our department, in our merit system. And that was before we were here tonight. But the 2 biggest reasons they left was pay and compensation. They didn't feel it was competitive enough, and the pressure to work overtime. And we'd spend a year studying departments all around the country, or they're all around the state, not the country, and very heavily Davis County. And as we'll see, let's skip ahead just for a minute. As you'll see, the problem that existed is that we have to correct our staffing levels. Officers don't want to get phone calls every day asking to work overtime. When I started, I loved the overtime. I came to Bountiful partially because of the overtime. I felt I can actually be a cop and maybe make a decent enough living to take care of my family and have a little fun with some toys. That was honestly part of my factoring in. That is not the motivation for a lot of our employees we're hiring nowadays. They don't want it. They'll work it, and they'll work, this job demands it, but they don't want the pressure every day to have to stay late, to work 4 hours more, to do an extra shift. And so that brings us here. We're looking at adjusting our staffing levels. You look at this graph that we have up here, and Bountiful is currently, without any change made, we are the lowest staffing in Davis County per population. And it's not that we're not busy. Last year our officers handled over 26,000 incidents. We made over 1,100 arrests. Most of the criminal activities coming in from Salt Lake County, and folks watch the news. If you don't think things are changing, you're not paying attention to the news, because things are changing, and I am concerned about the future. I'm not concerned about where we've been and where we are today, and we'll let things play out as they do, but everyone has to be recognizing there's some significant changes happening in our state as well as across the country, and there's been significant changes made at the legislative level to reduce penalties for treatment, and we fully support the concept of treatment versus incarceration. The problem is we don't have the money to treat, so we're keeping people out on the streets that are committing crimes over and over again. That is a risk, and it's not in our best interest as a city to be asleep at the wheel as this transition plays out over the next several years and maybe even decades, and hopefully it does provide a better, more stable environment in our communities, but it is not going that direction today. Even if we add these 2 officers, we would still be the third lowest city in Davis County in staffing. I'm actually proud of that. The one thing that would have drove me to change that a long time ago would have been if we could not be meeting that 4-minute response time on priority calls. Those of you that were around when we had the Mueller Park shooting incident, our first officer arrived in 41 seconds. We handled a very large, significant incident because we are a professional organization that is well trained and prepared and committed. And that's what you expect from us, that's what you want from us, and that's what I want to deliver as a police chief. I'm telling you, we cannot maintain that if we don't fill this gap and start bringing our levels up to where we're not pulling detectives off the street. We pulled our problem-oriented policing unit, which is our single most proactive unit of 2 officers to go out and deal with recurring problems that some of you in this room have benefited from gang activity to drug activity to simple things as speeding. If we have a problem, we can target them. Yet they've spent, in the last couple of years, in 2018, we pulled them, we shut that unit down for 2 months, 5 months in 2017, 1 month in 2016. In 2018, I pulled a detective out of our detective division for 3 months. That is not sustainable. Our administrators, my assistant chief, my lieutenants are working shifts at times just to fill behind where we're lacking. Our men and women deserve for us to do this. I would not be here asking you. I know our council and mayor and our city manager, nobody was thrilled about this conversation. But at the end of the day, we have to make tough decisions at times that are in our best interest to keep our city and our community safe and to make an environment that officers want to be here and stay here. And that's as much as we're asking for. I've had a couple of people say to me, wow, $300,000, if you're going to do a tax increase, it should be a bigger number. Nobody up here and nobody over there, including myself, wanted to ask for anything more than what we felt we needed to do to be able to continue to provide the services. I think that, as you look at the numbers, you listen to what we've talked about, we're more than happy to stay after and answer any specific questions. I really hope that our council will be supportive of this. I worry about the impact on the morale in our department if we cannot show that we have listened. They have gone a long time carrying this. I had employees feeling like we were waiting too long 2 years ago. And it's the right time to do it, and now is hopefully the moment that we can make that adjustment and be able to go back to continuing what we are committed to and what you deserve to have from us. So, Mayor and members of the council, thank you for the opportunity to say a few words.
Thank you, Chief. We appreciate you. Gary, any other words before we start a public hearing?
No, we're ready for the public hearing.
With that, we will open this up to a public hearing and ask that you come again to the microphone. We would like you to take not more than 3 minutes a person and state your name and where you're from, and we'll be happy to hear from you as a mayor and council. So with that, we'll open up this to discussion.
I'm John Kuntz, and I've been in the city for more than 30 or more than 50 years. I happen to represent those who have been retired for many years, and I can sympathize with all of you, but when you're on a fixed income and it continues, and in case some of you folks have not retired, Social Security does not go up according to the cost of living. It goes up according to the social formula that is, well, it's just plain not a real cost of living. If you consider the cost of living of homes, how they go up in cost, that's a lot different than this other. And I think you need to consider that. Perhaps after hearing our policeman plead his case, I think he's got a good vital case. And so I guess I'm changing what I was going to say. And so what I'm suggesting now is we need to get at the point where we quit spending money for things that are not essential. Not essential. And we've had some that we've been doing. We tore down a big old school, and sometimes the city buys land for future use. I don't know. Perhaps if we let private industry buy that property and build homes on it or businesses so we'd get more taxes, maybe that would be helpful. And in the meantime, I think we need to cut out a lot of these wonderful programs that are not essential. A few years ago, we spent quite a bit of money in a thing called a recreation center. At the same time, it seems to me we had another group that were in the recreation business that we put out of business. And they would have been paying taxes. So I just feel that we've got to tighten it up. I think that you're doing a disfavor to the senior people to continually raise taxes. Now, I know you've never raised them since 2001, but I talked with the county assessor people, and I got a little different vision on that. They indicated to me that that doesn't mean your income from tax has not gone up each year. What for you folks to know what that means is that the city council has not requested an additional tax increase above and beyond what the county they're already getting. And I think that's where the thing, when I first read this thing that it hasn't gone up in that many years, I thought, good grief. And then I called the county and talked with them, and they said, well, yeah, it's just they haven't increased requested a net tax increase for themselves, but they get increases as the property goes up, the inflation, we've heard about that and some of those. So I conclude by suggesting that we, better than to not have our police officers, maybe we should discontinue spending money on those projects that are not essential. And I don't think adding new parks are quite as essential as police departments and some of those things. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Gary Nelson. I'm from Bountiful. I've lived here for 28 years now. First of all, thank you, Chief. Bountiful's a great place to live, primarily because we have great public services, and I appreciate that. And I fully support the tax increase in the base rate to support those additional officers, and might suggest that we look maybe to increase that even by another officer or two. That would be my assessment. I do have one quibble, and that is on this flyer that went out. The statement was made that both population and inflation have increased. The population of Bountiful has not increased. It stayed about 44,000 people since I've lived here. When I got here, it was about 39,000. So I took those numbers from the city reports. So it stayed almost exactly the same. Net revenue for the city has increased over 50% just in the last 12 years. And so sales tax revenue has gone up over, I think, $3 million. There are revenue streams that weren't even existent in 2001 or 2002. So my feeling is that this is a pretty well-run city. I think the services we get are worth it. You know, we have power, we have water. Those services are paid for by the ratepayers. And so I would like some discussion about, you know, there was a discussion about $25,000 that we're losing. That's a pretty small percentage of the total sales tax revenue that we collect here. And there was no discussion of funds that we receive from the state, intergovernmental transfers that come from the state that are not part of the sales tax revenue. So maybe if you could have some discussion about that. But overall, I support an increase in taxes for the police department.
Thank you. Thanks. Ron Mortensen, citizen of Bountiful. When we talk about that there hasn't been a property tax increase since 2001, that's true. But we've had intergovernmental transfers from the power company, inter-fund transfers from the power company during that time. And at that time, since then, the electric rate has gone up. Since 2000, it has increased 35%. The transfers from the power company since 2001 have increased by 16%, up to $2.4 million this year. And when you take the property tax and you add on the transfer from the power company, our rate is 0.01448, which makes us the 7th lowest taxing entity, not the 2nd, and it makes us equivalent to North Salt Lake. So we have to look at, we've been supplementing revenues out of the power fund for many years and increasing the rates on that. And in the power fund also, in 2001, the customer fee was $1.13 a month, or $12 a year. Now it's a whopping $10 a month, the customer service fee, or $120 a year. The Bountiful power kilowatt hour since 2000 has gone up by 35%. So it's important when you look at this to remember that there's other sources of revenue coming in here, and the citizens are being hit with those charges through the power company rather than through the taxing system. It's also important to remember when you talk about this, we've heard about Social Security not going up, but wages haven't gone up either. And so when I hear government saying we haven't been kept full by inflation, well, your citizens haven't either. And government should not be more benefited than the citizens who are paying the cost on that. So I think it's also important to note that this year Bountiful citizens are going to pay more in the South Davis Sewage District. It raised its rate from $5 to $10 a month. That's a $60 increase for everybody in Bountiful. The state froze the property tax rate, and that means that our property taxes are going to go up automatically as the values of our homes go up. And they estimate just in this first year, the average person with a $250,000 home will pay an additional $23. So we got $60, we got $23, and even worse than that, the state income tax for families with 3 to 4 children is going to increase by $400 to $500 per family if you have 3 to 4 children and make between $40,000 and $80,000. So the bottom line is that the city's consistently increased the amount of revenue that it collects from its citizens. The power company transfers allow the city to keep its property tax low and to keep up with inflation. Bountiful citizens are being hit by numerous tax increases. And I'd note also that Bountiful pays the League of Cities and Towns. In 2017, they paid $26,646 to the League of Cities and Towns. And the League of Cities and Towns did not stop the $75,000 transfer out of the sales tax fund. Maybe we should have taken that $26,000 and paid it to offset that sales tax loss. So finally, if this tax increase does go through, it's imperative that every penny of it goes to the police department. And I'll tell you, if in a year or two we find out that the city can hire a couple of people to staff the new plaza without a tax increase, I would argue that it's been a switcheroo, that really the money was there, but they focused on the police rather than on this plaza. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. I appreciate you having this meeting for us. My name is Phil Wright. I'm a resident of Bountiful. Chief Ross, I need to start by thanking you for your service. My son is a police officer in West Valley, and I have great love and respect for what you do and all of our police officers, and I thank you. I don't think there's a question of anyone in this room of whether or not we should support our law enforcement or whether or not it makes sense to hire more. Let's talk about what is a tax increase. Taxes are involuntary fees. They're involuntary. We don't choose to pay them. We're told to pay them. They're levied by the government on individuals and corporations, whether they're local, regional, or national, in order to finance government activities. We all received this brochure telling us that our property taxes haven't gone up since 2001. It was a bit deceptive because in that particular paragraph it just said taxes. So let's talk about that claim. City officials have approved a new flat rate street light fee of $2 a month, $24 a year. When coupled with the customer service charge increases from our own power company, we're paying an additional $93.60 a year. The monthly flat electric rate customer charge has increased from $1.65 in 2008 to $10, as Ron just mentioned, in 2017. That's over, from the time of that, that's a 500% increase since that was first went into, or since the last 20 years. Because of these fees, Bountiful City Power anticipates to raise an additional $800,000 in revenue in 2018. This was from an article from our own Kendall and Harris and also from Jay Christensen of the Power Company. The 2018 fund transfer from the electric fund to the general fund was $2.49 million, up from $2.45 million in 2017, from $2.8 million in 2012 and $2.2 million in 2011.
$1.96 million in 2008. And here's what the city said. These transferred funds are used each year to cover the cost of important services like police, street maintenance. This transfer helps keep property taxes in Bountiful low. These dividends are used to offset what would otherwise be a significant increase in property taxes. And here we are today, talking about a property tax increase. It seems to me that that additional $800,000 that we are now going to get from this year forward is more than enough to cover a $75,000 shortfall because our state decided to punish us for not having a homeless shelter. And it should also be plenty to take care of the needs of our good police department. SB 189, 167, 234, 256, 120, and 361. I heard in the beginning how we have great representation in the legislature for our district. For those of you on the city council who lament having to raise property taxes because of SB 234, which stole $75,000 from our city, may I remind you, Mr. Mayor, Councilman Simonson and Councilman Knight, you all supported and endorsed for re-election our state representative who voted to steal that money. And it wasn't an issue for you then, but now your lamentation seems a little insincere. The problem we have here is lawmakers who seem to always be looking for ways to tax the public to get more money for their pet projects and special interests. Last year, many of you wanted to spend millions of dollars to build a new city hall, when instead you could have remodeled this building. Fortunately, enough public rebelled against that, so we didn't spend that kind of money. And here we are, looking for ways to fund our police department. We need to stop looking for more tax increases on citizens. We need to stop looking for more ways to tax the citizens and spend their money, and instead focus on living within our means. You have been charged with the responsibility to use wisdom and prudence in how you spend our tax money. We've already heard that in 2018 our state legislature raised our state property taxes by $125 million and fixed it for 5 years. Our taxes will continue to go up. They neglected to put the child tax credit back in, and families of 4 kids or more will spend 22% more in state income tax because of that. I didn't hear a resolution from the city of Bountiful complaining about that.
Hey, Phil.
They ignored Utah.
Phil?
I'm almost done, Mr. Mayor.
You're good?
Okay, I'm almost done.
You're good.
They ignored Utah families and instead bragged about a 0.05% tax cut while taking millions from Utah families. They want to raise our state gas tax now by 33.5%, tax the internet. They've increased our vehicle registration fees, and those who live in mobile homes, they've increased their fees as well. So I feel like and here we are in Bountiful listening to the stewards of our city telling us after increasing taxes in as much as 500% in the last 18 years, and after increasing our utility fees for an extra $800,000, that we now need to increase our property taxes to cover $75,000 and $225,000 for our police officers. I'm here as a citizen of Bountiful to tell you, it's not just fine. The power to tax is the power to control. And it's time that citizens of Bountiful take that control back. It's time for us to say no to no more taxes, and definitely no to raising our property taxes. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
please.
I need to correct the record. My name was used to endorse Phil Wright's opponent. That is not the truth. I have not endorsed you or your opponent, and I need an apology from you.
I saw your name on his flyers.
That name was not given by my permission. I want you to know that.
But I appreciate
that needs to be corrected.
Thank you.
Phil, my wife and I both voted for you, by the way.
Well, I appreciate that, but you also endorsed the mandate.
I can't control what someone else puts
Please,
on
can we...
flyer.
Ma'am, please. Thank you.
So the police chief made a very compelling argument, but also we heard a very compelling argument about how taxes take away our freedom. I would like to make the connection between Liberty Hills Academy being in your town and raising more money for your town. I don't know, I'm sure that you actually are familiar with American Heritage School in American Fork. They are booming. Homes are being built like crazy. And that is where you get your tax money from people moving into your town. These schools, American Heritage kind of has a monopoly right now on an LDS education. And Liberty Hills is where American Heritage used to be. If you support and sustain Liberty Hills, your town will bring in more money. I'm from Lehigh. I have come to your town every single day. I moved here from Michigan. I moved here from Michigan for this school. My husband, unfortunately, has work in Lehigh, and so I have to commute to Bountiful every single day because of this school, because of the needs of my children that could not be met anywhere else. Tuition at Liberty Hills Academy is $4,000, roughly. Tuition at American Heritage is $8,000 to $9,000. There is a big pull for parents to bring their children to this school in Bountiful. I spend money on your main street. I spend money at the fabric store, at the bread store, at Smith's, at Dick's, at your gas stations, at your restaurants. I'm here every day spending money, and there are other parents just like me who will do the same thing. People have moved to Bountiful because of this school. So I just want to make an argument again that it will bring in more money if you will support this school. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, thanks for giving me a moment to express a couple thoughts. My name is Shane Young. I live in Bountiful. And Chief Ross, I feel your plight, and I've seen you during the 24th parade, and you're not just keeping us safe, but you're interacting with the citizens, and I thank you for your service. I think, though, although I appreciate your argument, I don't know if it's a justification for a tax increase, because the police force is always going to need additional hands. And the challenges in hiring and so forth are much beyond having 2 additional spots available, even though that's a contributing factor. We are talking about $300,000. It's not a lot of money. However, I was uncomfortable with the justification as to why that $300,000 needed to be met with an increase in property taxes. I'm not affiliated with any particular party to push an agenda. I am speaking to you as a concerned citizen who plans to live in Bountiful for a very, very long time. And so when we use the rationale that we're going to increase taxes because we simply haven't had an increase, it just simply isn't good enough. And we expect you as our elected officials to come up with better ways to improve efficiencies and effectiveness in what you do, and also anticipate the services we're going to need in the future, because in the next 20 years, we're going to have a massive increase in population, double in Utah County. We're going to have increases here. And so we're going to have these discussions in the future, and we have to be better prepared. I would suspect that most everyone here owns a home. How many of you pay the same taxes you paid 5 years ago? How many of you pay more than 5 years ago, 4 years ago, 3 years ago, 2 years ago, or last year?
Sir, this is, you need to address the council.
Right.
My apologies.
Yeah, please.
What I'm trying to illustrate is we have had increases in our taxes, even though the rate may not have changed. It has already impacted a lot of us, so we hope you reconsider this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor and City Council members, I'm Earl Thomas. I live at 1287 Northeast Hills Drive in Bountiful. We've heard both arguments both ways. Now let's take you back 85 years ago, at 1954. I worked as a police officer in Bountiful City at that time for $305 a month, Chief. That's when we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have radios in the cars. We were lucky to be able to stand and see somebody with a shotgun facing us in our face and have no backup and hope that we could survive it and live. Our officers are still going through that today. I'm behind you 100%. that law enforcement is the only thing that we have in our city that gives us the protection for our families. When you call and you get somebody that's there in 3 minutes when somebody's had a heart attack, or when you call when somebody's drowned in a swimming pool and a police officer's there in 5 minutes to start doing mouth-to-mouth resuscitation and other things. Let's forget about the fact that we're getting a tax increase strictly for our police officers. If there's no place else to get the money, then we got to get it. Now, I want to go another step. When I look back, at some 40 years ago, we built a new home. It cost us $120,000 to build it. Yeah, we complain about taxes. Our taxes on it back at that time were about $375 a year. But there is one question I do need to ask the council and our city manager. What happened to the money that you picked back up when a fire district was organized and my taxes went up $200 a year? Where did the money go? Somewhere it went back into the general fund. Now, my other point that I would like to make to you is that, as this gentleman here said, it's not just your $19.50 more a year, it's the $20 a year or more in my tax bill to the Bountiful Water Conservatory District. My $200 more that's now going to the fire department. It's my $20 a month more that's going out to the Bountiful power increase that we just got. The $20 a month more that went into the water increase that we got. And it's the $60 a year more that's now going to the Bountiful, or to the South Davis Sewer District. We start adding all of those up, and that gets to be another $350 out of our pockets as senior citizens. We don't get a raise increase. Somewhere there has to be a justification to try to look carefully at where the dollars are going. When we look at what it takes to do our parks department, I'll be the first one to say that I was in the mayor's office today talking about the conditions of our restrooms and our parks. And yet I know from that standpoint that if we look at it with Mr. Brock Hill, who is the manager for the parks department, he doesn't have enough people to do what's expected of him to do. He's hiring people that are high school kids that has to be trained every year. We're going wrong somewhere here and trying to keep all of these things balanced out. But I do want to say, I'm behind you to pass this tax increase that you have given us. I know that our people running the finances of this city have gone through this frontwards and backwards trying to place a value where you can find new dollars. And if there aren't those new dollars, I'm not making $305 a month anymore, nor is anybody else in this room. You're making $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a year, many of you, and some of you $100,000 a year to $200,000 a year. Let's not everybody complain about the taxes. You're getting paid extra dollars too. So we have to balance everything in our lives to make it happen. I want to thank this council and our mayor and our staff of this city. You've done a fantastic job. I have never gone to our city manager. I've never gone to our parks department manager, my water department manager, my power manager, or to any member of this council or the mayor and not have you to follow through on a positive attitude to get things done the way that we'd ask you to do it. So thank you for the opportunity to speak. And Chief, yes, you need more officers than 2. I hope we don't see what's going on in Chicago ever come to Bountiful. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, my name is Joe West. I'm a Bountiful resident.
just looking at my own situation, I looked over the last 16 years. The assessed value of our home went up by 102%. The tax that we pay went up by 104%. If I look at the inflation over that same period of time, it depends on whose numbers I use, but it looks like it's between 31 and 37%. It appears to me that you've done very well with the inflation. I'm paying about 2.5 times more now in taxes than can be justified by inflation. The other comment I would like to make has to do with just the way you're presenting things. On the flyer it says that the total tax is going up by 1.3%, but Bountiful's portion is really going up by over 13%. I think that's just a little bit disingenuous to present it that way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor and members of the City Council, my name is Terry Eggett, and I'm a citizen of Bountiful. I live at 1311 East 1700 South, and people know us because the llamas up there are mine. So, first of all, I wanted to thank Chief Ross for his presentation and all he does for Bountiful. As one who had grandchildren at Muir Park Junior High, when that incident occurred, I'm very grateful for your quick response and that was resolved the way it was, and I fully support what you have asked for today. Mine's a little bit simpler than some that's been addressed today, and it's just the first issue of the $75,000 that is being replaced through property tax for a loss in sales tax revenue. And based on what Gary Nelson said about the increases that have been shown historically in sales tax, I would question why we have to use property tax to supplement sales tax that probably will increase unless we aren't increasing our sales tax base. That is a concern for me because I look at Farmington and Centerville and Woods Cross and West Bountiful, which is where I do most of my shopping because Bountiful doesn't provide the places that I would shop normally. And that's a deep concern to me. If we're depending on property tax revenue for everything that we're trying to accomplish and fund in Bountiful, that's not going to work. And we're going to end up with a unified police department like other areas in the valley and fire department if we don't have the tax base and a sales tax to support that. That's a concern that I have, and I just want to raise that. So my recommendation would be, if the funds are there from sales tax increases, don't assess it through property taxes, do it correctly, and strike that $75,000 and take care of that through sales tax. Thank you very much.
Please.
So I'll make this quick because my 6-week-old kid has been asleep for 2.5 hours. So okay. So I'm Alex Densley. Yeah, thank you, John. So most of you know me because I ran for city council and was heavily involved in this city. So as I went through this, I don't disagree with Chief Ross. I came to the meeting that you guys had open house a couple of weeks ago. I appreciate the opportunity to actually come here and talk with the city, talk with Chief Ross. We were over here in the corner, and I had the opportunity to talk to him. I don't deny that Chief Ross is right when he probably says, I need more officers. Police chief isn't just going to willy-nilly say, hey, I need more officers. Bountiful is well put together in that aspect. We've always run a very tight ship in that aspect. The thing that I ran into is, as I started just to look at some of the initial things, is that has been mentioned by many, is the increases of things. To give you an idea, I bought the most decrepit home on the street. Gary Hill's familiar with it because his father lives on my street. I bought a home that was way out of whack. I had to come to Paul Rowland. He probably doesn't remember, but I had to beg him to turn on the power so that I could qualify for the loan because they condemned the power to this house. The reason why I bring this up is My generation is coming forward. We're getting hit with the issues and problems that have been brought forth for years and years and years of buying older homes in the city, trying to rejuvenate it, the infrastructure, the problems that we run into. The questions I had forward is, I'm wondering if we can't find that funding other places. It's already been mentioned. A year and a half ago, we sat in here and, to quote Richard Higginson, please put away your pitchforks and flames, where we have brains on us, because there was a huge discrepancy on what we should do for a city hall. We had $13 million that was at least talked about putting away for that. My question is if we couldn't use that money for some of its purposes to possibly offset some of those costs otherwise. We received a power notice increase that we needed $5 more a month to increase the power of streetlights. Could some of that $13 million be put towards that to bring that all up to code for the next 40 years, where we've already got life expectancy from the prior? Could we use some of that money to also offset those water lines, that extra $3? The reason why I bring that up and some of these other things is because I live well within my means. I work 2 jobs. My wife works 2 jobs. And that's just for us to have a bare bones basic house. It's nothing fancy. I have a truck payment and I have a mortgage payment. And just like everybody else has mentioned, I've watched mine go up over $60,000 in 2 years as far as the county assessor. The other question is, I'm wondering if we can't fund it from that power transfer fund. Every year, in looking at it, we say that we put apart 10% of the power fund for the general fund. But even going through the last couple of records, even including this year, we didn't use the full 10%. We used just 7% of that, leaving a full 3% that was budgeted in our system to be used for the general fund. So can we use that 3%? Can we use some of this extra money to possibly offset this a little bit? I think the funding is there, at least just from the little bit that I've been able to look at and do, but I don't feel like there's been any discussion or time to have that with the council. We've had just the one little thing, and then here we are to make a decision. So I just asked the council, can we table this? Can we look at some of these other options where these funding records went and go from there? Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Robert Hood, Bountiful resident. Mr. Mayor, you and I have spoken about the issue of the interface to the grid that is failing. That's a $6 million job that needs to be taken care of so that we have continuing power in Bountiful. And I think one of the things that's a bit confusing is the fact that the transfer, which has been brought up several times, kind of muddies the ability to understand tax rate increases and what have you. I want you to know that I very much appreciate the fact that we're having an input to you tonight from the public because we're having a tax rate consideration. I certainly do support Bountiful Police. They do a marvelous job. The county came looking for somebody for their new sheriff in our department, so we do a great job here. But I think one of the things that would help us all, if when the public input is concluded, you take a few minutes and help us understand a little more about the transfer and what's happening on the transfer and how much money is not being left there because they have to have a certain amount in order to keep their bond ratings up. And there's a great deal of expense. 28 years to replace the poles that stand. That's the current situation right now. I got my information directly from Bountiful Power, so I know what's going on in Bountiful Power. And I know that it's not as clean as we'd like for it to be, and there are needs there that need to be talked about. I do appreciate this meeting, and I thank you for it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Please.
How y'all doing? My name is Jeff Uphold, 320 West, 1000 North. Just moved here about a month ago. This is my first home that I've bought, and I feel the pain of most of the people my age trying to buy a home in Utah, especially on Utah wages. Another consideration to take into account when you consider property tax increases is average home values and actual average home prices in Utah. It's going up like crazy, and wages aren't keeping pace. Part of that is because you have a lot of people coming in from the coasts, moving here on coast salaries, outbidding Utahns for homes and driving up prices. And so if you want to talk about bringing in new families, I don't think a good way to do that is by increasing the property taxes. Additionally, this is only my second meeting. I came to the first one about a month ago, and I had some thoughts that kind of relate to my concerns regarding the tax increase, regarding due diligence of the City Council. At the last City Council meeting, you approved the purchase of legal services for Larson, Nash & Larson, firm out of West Valley City. And being a proposal writer, I'm very familiar with the RFP process and the due diligence, and I don't think the due diligence was followed in that purchasing process, given the fact that the purchase was approved based on the fact that two of the lawyers went to high school here, and they have good references, and that they've worked with the city for a while. No vendor is going to give you bad references, and I don't think that the fact that they went to high school here gives them any real merit in terms of their ability to provide legal services. So I say that to make this point, and based on the arguments that I've seen here, I don't think the due diligence has been there, and I'd just like to see, to complete the critical feedback loop and provide some suggestions, I would just like to see more consideration to see where we could, where else we could possibly get this money from. So, and also I want to thank the chief too. I know it's not easy to do the job that you do when you're in an organization where if bad things happen, people die, and it's even harder to do that when you're understaffed. So thank you guys, and what I would ask is that the city try to find money elsewhere to give the chief the adequate staff that he needs, and that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, with that, we will close the public hearing. We appreciate all of you willing to stand up and say your piece here. Always takes some courage to do it. Thank you. Turn any time back over to you, Gary.
With the mayor's permission, I might try to answer a couple of the questions that were raised specifically that might be of some help. I'll start with the fire district that Mr. Thomas asked. Great question. The fire district is paid for by both a property tax rate and an assessment to each of the cities that participated, each of the 5. So when they created the district, they levied a tax in addition to the assessment that we're already paying. So in other words, we didn't get any money back. We didn't stop paying $2 million to the fire district. We're still paying $2 million to the fire district out of our general fund. The tax increase by the fire district was to hire, Mayor, 24 additional firefighters for 3 additional shifts, and to renovate and rebuild 2 different buildings. So there was no savings to the city when the district was created.
Yeah, maybe just as to add, Gary, we talked about, the chief talked about the 4 minutes response time. With the money that you spent, which was 25 cents a day, for gaining from 6-minute response time by the fire department down to 4 minutes, which is the same as the chief is talking about. Really, you bought 2 minutes of life, and that'll make a difference in a lot of people's lives. Go ahead.
Next question, and I probably won't hit all of them, but I'll hit the major ones that I think were addressed about the sales tax increases.
Please.
The balance between sales tax and property tax. Bountiful City generates or collects about $2 million in sales tax, in property tax, and we collect about $8 million in sales tax. So the balance is actually the exact opposite of, we're not becoming unbalanced by increasing our property taxes. It's the other way around. Over time, what has happened with those increases is those increases in sales tax have been paying the cost of inflation, because property tax has not. And we've become increasingly more dependent upon our sales tax despite our very limited sales tax base. And so that's what's happened with the sales tax. It's not going unused, and it's been paying for the defrayed property tax increases that we could have done instead, but the council instead said, we're getting increases in revenue, we'll rely on those. A question was raised about the other fees that are paid for the other services, and it's probably worth a little bit of just a minute to remind everybody that all of the services that are paid for with fees that are, we call them enterprise funds or business type services. So that's like the golf course, it's the power fund, it's the water fund. Those all have to be paid with their own fees. So you can't take sales tax or property tax and subsidize those funds. So the increases that residents have seen that we've had to have for our water system, for our power system, those pay specifically for those services. We can't take a property tax increase and put into those other funds. Likewise, we try very hard. We don't take other money from other funds and transfer into the general fund to pay for police services. The one exception to that is the interfund transfer from our power fund. And the way that works is this: the power fund. Let's assume that the city that we were on was Rocky Mountain Power. Rocky Mountain Power is a private business that has shareholders. Those shareholders are entitled to a dividend at each year. So part of the revenue that Rocky Mountain Power sees goes back into its shareholders. A private utility, such as our power department, also has a dividend or revenues over expenditures at the end of each year. But rather than those revenues going back as a dividend to shareholders, they go back to the taxpayers in the form of a transfer to the general fund to keep our property taxes low. If, as was suggested, we did away with the transfer from the power fund to the general fund, it would require more than a 100% increase in property taxes. And it would be a disproportionate increase because there are a number of properties in town, and we'll talk about this tonight with the White House.
Gary, I would say that's a good example of what happened in Kaysville, 106% increase when they denied that.
That's correct.
138.
Yeah. There are properties in town that are tax exempt. All of our schools, all of the churches, any government building, that includes schools, county buildings, the hospitals, they're all property tax exempt. None of them pay any property tax to the city, but they all receive general fund services such as police and streets and plowing, but they also pay power bill. So this is one way for those businesses to pay towards the general fund services that we receive. As far as it being a hidden tax or the inability to come and not talk about that, we notify every resident every year in the specific mailer that we're going to transfer the funds. We tell how much we're going to fund, and we actually have transferred the entire 10%, Alex, not 7%. There was a change in state law that changes how we have to report that, but it is still the 10%. But there is also a public hearing now every year as there was this year and last year. So residents have the same opportunity to come and discuss a transfer as they do the property tax increase.
Gary, before you move on, can I make a comment quickly?
Yes.
I want folks to know as well that as a council, we're very keenly aware of where we slot in with Rocky Mountain Power. We want our residents not only to get the benefit of lower property taxes because of that transfer, we want to be sure that you're getting the benefit of cheaper power as well. So we have a more reliable system that we have control over, cheaper power, as well as having that dividend back to the taxpayers each year from the transfer from the Power Department fund.
Thank you.
So,
Thanks, Richard.
Yes, I think we're 8% below the property, the rates of Rocky Mountain Power for our residents. So it's really a triple benefit for Bountiful. Regarding the $800,000 light that's going towards the Light and Power Fund that was raised by Mr. Wright, that's not money that can be transferred to the general fund to pay for police services. It's specifically earmarked to replace the power poles. And it's not a $5 a month charge, it's that somebody else mentioned. Mr. Wright correctly identified that as a $2 per month. But that is specifically designated to pay for the light pole replacement. Let's see, and then with regards to increases in people's property taxes, I'm not surprised that all of our property taxes have gone up over the years. I think part of what we were pointing out is that it wasn't Bountiful's rates that went up. The school district does a property tax rate nearly every year. That includes major bonding that they approved that is gone. And if you remember, $7 out of every $100 that you pay in your property tax comes to Bountiful. That's it. And that's what we use to provide all of these services. And so certainly rates have gone up, but they weren't Bountiful's rates that went up. And just on a final point as far as the justification for the rate, I think what we were really trying to demonstrate through all the discussions we've had about this since May is that the justification is not simply that we haven't done it for a long time and we want it. We think we've demonstrated a need for additional police officers. I think we've demonstrated that we've been very frugal over the years and taken advantage of sales tax increases to not have to do this for a number of years. But the time of ignoring property tax is over with. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I think that's really healthy to have Gary kind of go through those so that you might see the city perspective. I think just one item that I would like to clarify, and that is the due diligence of the council. What you see before you here with the city council is a group of people that really reside all over the city, downtown, to the south, to the west, to the east, and you know, it's unlike sometimes the federal government where they don't have to pay the same things as other citizens. That's not true in Bountiful. We all take this very seriously, and you have a very mature council here, ones that have a lot of different opinions. But I'm very proud of the fact that they give great respect to each other. But even more than that is that they're really concerned. And I don't have a vote with this, although I mean it's just this. I support this tax. I don't have a vote as we come along here, but I can just tell you that the due diligence is good, and there isn't one person on here that wouldn't like to find a different way than having this meeting and having a truth in taxation. But you have a great council, and let me tell you, they do their due diligence. Every one of those people sitting before you go through all of the budgeting process for all of the things that you're talking about. They don't just come here on a Tuesday night, twice a week, twice a month, and vote willy-nilly on these very, very serious and complex things. And we also respect the other side. You know, it's you know, the old idea that it takes an awfully thin pancake not to have two sides. There's always two sides. And what we try to do here in this council is to make the very, very best choices that we can. And I really respect our council. And as far as due diligence, you wouldn't find a better group of people who do their due diligence than you have before you in Bountiful. And with that, do we have any more questions for Gary? Any other comments before we proceed?
Can you close the public hearing?
And did I close the public hearing? Okay, I'll close the public hearing, but I think I did, yeah. Okay, I did.
I think.
Yeah, I did.
I thought you did.
Yeah. Anyway, the public hearing's closed, so if we closed it twice. So, are there any other, John Mark or Richard or any?
Just a couple of random thoughts, if I could.
Please.
I know that there's an old saying in English, which I'm not necessarily great at, that says you shouldn't have all your eggs in one basket. And as we have relied on our increasing sales tax dollars to cover the shortfall in our buying power with our property tax, we have increasingly put our eggs into one basket. And sadly, that basket is the most volatile and least reliable basket. And I hate property taxes. I really do. And it irritates me that it feels like I'm renting my home for X number of dollars from the county every month. It's bothersome. But as we've gone through the process and looked at potential stable sources of revenue and where the city has not kept up with the decrease in buying power and the increase in costs, it seems right for us at this time, in my opinion, to make a very small adjustment to our property tax. I want you to know that it's intentional that we're still going to remain the second lowest city in city tax rate in the county. Ron, you can shake your head, but you're wrong. You've added a whole bunch of stuff that is not city tax into your numbers. We're still going to be the second lowest tax city in the county, period. That's intentional. We didn't try to sneak any extra cushion in here. We have no desire to try to pad our numbers so that we can somehow pay for sneaky programs that we come up with in our smoke-filled rooms. That's just not how it happens. We've tried to be mindful. We need to rely on more stable sources of revenue to balance the risk and to balance our budgets. And I hope that people can understand that we really have put a lot of time and effort into this. That's all I have.
Thank you, Richard. Any others?
Did you want to?
Kendall, please.
So I just want to let you know that I have agonized over this because I'm really sensitive to the needs of families that are on fixed incomes. And I know for me and my husband, we work hard. We try to let our kids have piano lessons and soccer, and I know how it is to try to make ends meet. And even if our residents could afford a tax increase, it wouldn't justify it. So it's really been a tough thing as we work through this, and we've been in budget meetings for months, analyzing these things. I do feel like, over the last many years, the prices of materials have increased, the prices of labor has increased, the things that we're funding, and it would really actually be irresponsible. I know there are some cities that let things go, like the water pipes, and then there's big, horrific problems, and then everyone's mad because they didn't fund things like at the levels they needed to be funded. And so in some ways, I think it's really our responsibility, even though it's not what we want to have to do. And I know for me, it's been said a lot tonight too, that when costs go up, you have to look at ways to tighten. And I think that's really important. And so I've really asked the different department heads what they've done. And they've given me a lot of specific things over the last years that they have done. Things like self-service in business licensing, recent modifications to banking processes, prosecutors' offices gone virtually paperless. Almost all departments have modified their schedules to reduce overtime. The IT department has extended the life of hundreds of PCs, adding memory and hard drives. That's just the tip of the iceberg. So for years, our departments have been making adjustments to tighten their belts. And I chair the law enforcement budget committee, the budget meetings, and I've been over those budgets with a fine-tooth comb. I just want you to know we really have looked at this closely, and we don't take it lightly. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Thank you, Kendall. And Beth, please.
Thank you, Mayor. And I just wanted to echo what the Mayor indicated about all of us sitting here and asking those types of questions that you are undoubtedly asking and you asked of us during the public hearing. And every single one of us has notes of the questions that people asked, the statements that they made. We really tried to make sure that we were getting all the information. And I do have to say that it is always a challenge to be up here to making these types of decisions. And one of the things that I wanted to say is that from a long-term perspective, I feel that Bountiful City and our finance team, our city manager, have done an amazing job overall Because even during the most challenging time recently, which was the recession in 2008, we made do. We tried to do everything that we could to make sure that not only did we protect the services that needed to be taken care of, but that we also made sure that we didn't have a negative impact on anything else that we were doing. And I think that when you look at these things over time, and then you make those types of decisions to make sure that you're doing the infrastructure things and the other things that people rely on. People want to have a community that means a lot to them, and that all of this is kind of that fabric. And I wanted to say that I echo what other people say. I know I see price increases every time I turn around too, and I know that it is a challenge, but at the same time I feel very confident in the analysis that all of our staff and our city manager have done, and I just wanted to say that as well. So thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Beth. Any other comments?
Mayor, can I make just a quick comment as being the newest member of the City Council?
Please, Chris.
On quite a learning curve. I've had the opportunity of spending time with all the department heads. They've sat down with me. We've gone into detail on the budgets. I'm impressed with the way this city runs and how each department head is looking on how to save money. They look at this money that they have been given to use the best of their ability, and I am so impressed with the way they're doing it. I don't like to see tax increases. I don't think anybody here does. There's a point where we need to make a little increase. And I think that from what I've learned and what I've studied and what I've been able to learn, I'm very comfortable with this proposal that's been made. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? You have anything to say, John Mark? Okay, with that, if there are no more questions, I would look for a motion to the resolution of property tax, ordinance 2018-06.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve Resolution 2018-10, setting a property tax rate of 0.000880 for the 2018 taxes, and Ordinance 2018-06, which adopts the fiscal year 2018-2019 tentative budget as the city's final budget.
And do I have a second?
Second.
Good. Any other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you, council. And we'll turn some time now over to Chad. Thanks, Chad.
Nice.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Sorry for the delay. We were changing over some technology. Hopefully that'll change over here in just a second with Tyson. We're hoping so when we press the right buttons. For now, I'll go ahead and jump into this discussion related to this request. I might have to.
I've got a clicker.
Somewhere there is a microphone that's run amok. It's really loud.
We will move forward and hope the technology catches up with us here, but the request is for a change, a modification, an amendment to the downtown zone to allow for private schools, to list private schools as allowed use in the downtown. Currently, the downtown zone, the DN zone, does not allow for private or public schools as a use in the downtown. So this request would be to change that
to allow for private schools in downtown. Now, we have looked at this item, and this item has been to the Planning Commission and received a recommendation of denial, which we're bringing forward to the City Council, and I'll go through that a little bit more in just a few minutes. Before I do that, though, I want to say something that I said at the Planning Commission. I think it's important to remember that with any policy issue, which is what this is a policy issue, two people, reasonable people, can have different opinions about how things should go forward. So that's what this is a policy discussion. We're talking about a broad policy issue, whether or not we allow for schools in our downtown zone. And so it's important to focus the discussion on that broad policy issue. It's very tempting in these situations to talk about a specific property or to look at just current conditions, but with policy issues, we're looking at the long-term impacts of choices that have been made. So as we have looked at this request, our analysis of this has been based on a couple of different things. First, on our downtown master plan. We've looked at the policies and goals of our downtown master plan, and we have analyzed this based on those goals and policy. We've also looked at the direction that we've received from this council related to our downtown. As you're aware, we've had a lot of discussion around our downtown in the last year or so, year and a half really, and related to how our downtown should develop. And I'll talk about that in just a little more detail in just a minute. But that's as the legislative body of our city, that's one of your duties is to set goals and policies, give legislative policy direction to staff, and that's what our analysis has been based on, is that legislative policy direction. Now, as the legislative body, you're also entitled to change that direction, and that's your right as the legislative body. So if you wish to give staff different direction than what we've received in the past, that's your right as the legislative body. With that, I want to just jump into some discussion about some of those policy issues, broad policy issues related to Main Street. Excuse me. The first one is just Main Street itself. When we look at our downtown zone, we have a Main Street that extends from it goes from 400 north to 500 south, 4th north to 5th south. That's the extent of our historic downtown Main Street. That's where our downtown zone has its boundaries. So we have the north border on 400 north, the south border on 5th south. Within that, we have a limited amount of frontage on Main Street. Main Street is the most viable location for a commercial business in our downtown zone. It's the street that gets the most traffic. It's the street that is really oriented towards business. That's the historic Main Street of downtown, is the commerce center of downtown, or of Bountiful. So for that reason, it's important to consider what types of uses are appropriate for Main Street in that downtown area. Because there's a limited commodity of frontage, again, that frontage we've been given policy and direction from council to reserve that for commercial type uses. If you remember in our recent discussion about the downtown zone and about the zoning standards for downtown, we have had discussions about making sure that prime frontage on Main Street is not taken up by things like residential use. We specifically, at the code that we just adopted back in March, required that ground floor on Main Street be dedicated to commercial use. It couldn't be, you couldn't extend your residential units down to that ground floor. And the reason for that, again, is that that's the most viable location for commercial in our downtown. It's the area where that it's most likely to succeed. One of the things that we've talked about a lot tonight is tax generation. Commercial uses generate sales tax and property tax. School uses don't. And so that's a factor that needs to be considered in changing the policies for downtown. As we look at tax generation, you'll recall back in 2015, we were able to negotiate successfully an extension of our RDA tax increment collection period, another 20 years to collect tax increment. Part of that discussion with the other taxing entities, with Davis School District, Davis County, the other smaller taxing entities, was that we would work during that time period to increase our tax base in our RDA area, which this is part of. Our downtown is one of the major areas for the RDA district. So again, as we consider whether or not to change the uses in our downtown, we need to be aware that changes that would provide uses that don't generate tax, don't generate property tax and sales tax, will have an impact on the overall tax collected during that period. So I want to jump back about, I guess it's been 7 or 8 months now, to our council discussion back in February about what we want, the vision for our downtown. If you recall, we talked a lot about a survey that was done by a company called Brooks International, Roger Brooks. He's an economic development specialist. He specializes in downtowns, specifically downtown economic development. And he and his company have spent, his career basically looking at different cities and what elements constitute a successful downtown. He came up with 20, he calls them his 20 ingredients of a successful downtown. You recall the discussion we had about that. As part of that discussion, or as part of that survey, they looked at 400 successful downtowns in North America, Canada, and the United States, and they looked at what things each of those downtowns had in common. And they came up with 20, what they call 20 ingredients of a successful downtown. They said that not every single one of those downtowns had all of those ingredients, but these were common things that they found in each of those successful downtowns. And as you recall, there was one of those ingredients was a critical mass of certain types of uses. They had a critical mass of retail, of restaurants, and of uses that stayed open past 6 p.m. As we looked at our own downtown, we found that we actually had more retail than we thought we did. There was quite a bit of retail in that downtown area, and that was very exciting for us, and we were glad to see that. We did find, though, that the restaurants in our downtown didn't meet that critical mass that they had found that successful downtowns have. So as we identified that in discussions with the council, we determined that it was important for us to try to get additional restaurants into our downtown. So that has been something that we have worked on, we continue to work on as we discuss the potential of restaurants to move into our downtown area. One of the issues that comes along with the discussions with some restaurants, not all, but some, is the ability to obtain an alcohol license. For some restaurants, it's very important. And when we talk about an alcohol license, I want to make sure we're clear. We're not talking about a bar. We're talking about a restaurant alcohol license. This would be a license for, and I'm going to use these two examples because we have, as far as we know, these are not planning on moving to our downtown, but Robin Tino's, for example, El Matador. These are restaurants that are family restaurants that we all enjoy that have a desire for an alcohol license. So those are the types of discussions that we've had. Any adoption of a code that allows for schools in the downtown will limit the areas where restaurants with alcohol service can go. State law provides for minimum separations from uses, community uses, like churches, schools, parks, public parks. And so any adoption of a standard that would allow for schools will impact the ability for a restaurant that wants an alcohol license to locate in our downtown. So I'm not going to spend too much time on that. That's just one factor, but it is a factor that needs to be considered. If we can get the technology working, which is looking like a no-go, I do have some maps. I'll work on it myself here in a second when I sit down. We did look at the analysis. We already have some uses downtown, the Tabernacle, our Fireman's Park, the Future Plaza, that would already limit where those restaurants could potentially go. So I'm going to move off that now. A couple other things to look at as we look at this particular request is just operational considerations. Our downtown is set up as a commerce district. We have concerns about the operational characteristics of a school in our downtown. whether or not that would work out. We have concerns over the lack of open space, open play space around this building that could be used by school children to play and to recreate. We haven't worked out all the details on how circulation and drop-off and pickup would work off, but that would be another operational concern that we would have as a city. And so there are some other operational concerns we're looking at. I'm not going to take any more time. You have the staff report in front of you. I just want to, again, reiterate that this was forwarded to our Planning Commission, and they did review this. They held a public hearing, and they determined, after holding that public hearing, they forwarded a recommendation to deny the requested amendment. Now, that sets up next steps for the City Council. Bountiful law provides that with a negative recommendation from the Planning Commission, the City Council may simply concur with that recommendation and not hold a public hearing and simply agree with the recommendation and move forward with that denial forwarded from the Planning Commission. So I had a little slide that gave you a couple of possible options here, but I'll just tell you what those are. The two options that are also, again, laid out in your staff report are, first, the council can make a motion to concur with the Planning Commission and to deny the request, and if that is what you decide to do, no public hearing is required. The City Council may also make a motion to hold a public hearing, to take public testimony, and then at that point to make a decision either to approve, to amend and improve, or to deny the request. So that's the recommendation that we've given you is, again, to follow the Planning Commission's recommendation of denial. However, you do have those two options, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if I can.
I have a question, Chad. So I know that the school was interested in, I know that at one point it was talked about that they could operate, they were hoping to operate as a reception center on the basement. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, I think they did talk about that in the Planning Commission meeting, yes.
Okay. So if they were operating as a reception center in the basement, then how does that affect sales tax?
On the first floor, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Well, in terms of, I guess we'd have to see if, how often that happened.
Yeah. If they were able to operate successfully as a reception center on the basement, then that would contribute to sales tax, right?
Potentially.
Okay. Thanks.
And Gary might be able to, I mean, if we want to have that discussion, we'll talk a little bit more about the tax issues, but.
Thanks.
Other questions for Chad? Given those choices, I'm happy to request a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we accept the Planning Commission's recommendation of denial or holding a public hearing on rezoning the downtown district.
And is there a second? And is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
Yes.
Okay, please.
Are there members of the council that would like to hear from the public that sits assembled here before they vote on the issue?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm good. I'm good.
I also would like to hear from folks. So I like the two of you, and I'm comfortable with the motion.
I'm going to withdraw my motion, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. And is there another motion that would like to be made?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I move that we allow folks who would like to enlighten us with the positive aspects of Liberty Hills and why this would be a good move for our downtown to very briefly address us at an open hearing to be held immediately.
Second.
There's a second. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I have a question. Mr. City Manager.
Yes, sir.
Sorry to wake you up over there.
I'm back.
If we're going to have a public hearing, does it not have to be advertised? Noticed?
It was. It was noticed for tonight, just in case the council wanted to do this. So we're taken care of.
You guys maybe are as good as we think you are.
Yeah, it's true.
Maybe.
So we've had a motion and a second to hold a public hearing. Do I have any further discussion? All in favor of that motion?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Thanks.
With that, thank you. And we will open this up and to a public hearing. And again, you've all heard what I had to say before, and we'd like you to keep your comments as brief as you can, but we want to hear from you. So maybe 3 minutes at the most again, and we'll turn the time over to you. Please state your name when you come up, okay? So we've got it.
I'm Jill Thompson. I'm the applicant and the principal of Liberty Hills Academy, and I'd like to thank you for allowing us to be heard tonight. I do want to clarify some of the points that Chad talked about in his staff report. In the 2006 adopting the mixed use for this resident or this downtown zone, it was established to provide a district primarily for the preservation of mixed use character. In your 2009 downtown master plan, which I thought was thoughtfully written, it was well conceived, and I really applaud you for trying to revitalize that downtown zone. It states on page 4 that there are currently insufficient daytime customers in the area to support businesses, and the major source of daytime population in Bountiful includes professional office buildings, medical buildings, schools, retirement communities, and government buildings. It lists schools as a driver for customers on your main street. We fit right in with this mixed use. We will drive customers to come to our main street, as you've heard one of our parents. They're here in your town every day, 5 days a week. For every parent that drops off students at our school, they have 340 exposures each year at a minimum to your downtown. Moms are dressed, kids are dropped off, and they're ready to go right before your business is open on Main Street. We've held a lot of events in the evening. We gave you a list in our packet. Chamber orchestra, adult education, photos with Santa, Eagle Scout projects, meet the candidates, all sorts of things. As we went up and down your Main Street and talked to business owners, we came up with a lot of other ideas of things we'd like to do. We'd like to use that ballroom to do dances, daddy-daughter dances, Valentine dances, big band concerts, high school sport teams, banquets, family reunions. The White House clothing store holds a fashion show. They would like to hold it there as well. Bridal showers, we would again open it up for wedding receptions, all sorts of events that we can do at night. We also have 32 of your, and you can have this if you want, 32 of your Main Street business owners who signed a petition that say they want us on their Main Street. We've gone to them, we've talked to them, we want to collaborate with them, we want to have incentives to work together to make this great. What you guys want, we want. We want to make this happen. So I found it interesting too, as I read through your 2009 master plan, that the chairperson for this steering committee was Tom Smith. Clearly Tom Smith had a guiding hand in the development of this. He had a guiding hand in the vision and implementation of this. Tom Smith was one of the 2 individuals on the planning commission that voted in favor for us. He can see that we fit into this plan. We will benefit the city. He can see that. He's the one who has the vision, and I hope that you can see that as well tonight. I like that Chad talked about the 20 ingredients for an outstanding downtown. I thought those were great too. And looking through that, number 7 talks about the downtown revitalization effort needs the property owners that will make a difference and the ability to look long term. Reduce rental rates so they can develop critical mass. It takes 1/3 of your property owners working together to reinvent your downtown. Every downtown effort requires tireless pioneers and those who champion the cause. Enthusiasm is contagious and an essential ingredient for your revitalization effort. Liberty Hills Academy are the pioneers for this. We want to make a difference and we want to think long term. We've already created relationships with your Main Street businesses, as you can see as evidenced by them wanting us to be here. We want to purchase both the White House building, the reception center, and the clothing store. So in doing that, we're preserving the clothing store to maintain their occupancy on Main Street. on the storefront. Both of those buildings are tied together because they were owned by family. Some of the units for air conditioning and cooling are on top of the other buildings. Space that the reception center accesses is built on top of the clothing store. They share some of the utilities. So it's really difficult to sell these buildings independent of each other. We want to buy it. We want to keep the clothing store right where they're at. They're a staple in Bountiful. They've been there for 50 years. We want them to be there. We want to preserve that. In fact, we had our architect draw up, of the two buildings, the majority of that remains retail. We're preserving that. Thank you. We want to work with businesses too. We don't think that we're in competition or we're trying to push any of these out. We want to work together with you, the city, with the business owners, for everyone that's here. And we've been really impressed with all your business owners on Main Street. The Whites have been incredibly generous. We've had lots of your Main Street business owners offer to help us fundraise, help with signage, donate carpet, donate materials, all sorts of things to help us. This is the kind of galvanizing project that you want on your downtown. We have this enthusiasm and this ability to gather and galvanize your Main Street. Let us help you. One of the other things I want to talk about was this tax revenue. For public schools, yes, there's no property tax, none of that. For us, our 501c is different, 501c3 is different for tax revenue. I've talked to Sherry Mayer in the tax administration office in Davis County. She's our taxing entity contact. And anytime that we open up our building, two things happen. Either we open it up for free, and we let the community use our building as a venue, and that is an intrinsic value to the community, or if we open it up privately and we charge for that, then that's a taxable event. That we have to pay for. So the clothing store will be taxable exactly the same way it is 100% of the time, like it already is, even though we're the building owner. And anytime that we open up our building and we charge for that, again, that's taxable. So let's say we had a reception that wanted to come be there. Your photographer, your flowers, your catering, all of those things are still taxable, just the same as they would be. And the venue is also taxable because we have to pay proportionally for when we're using it for nonprofit and for when we're using it for profit. So it's misleading to say that because we're a nonprofit when we come in, there'll be no tax revenue generation from that. That's just not true. The other thing that was brought up was this alcohol use in restaurants. I don't feel like we're at odds with the city on this. We would love to have lots of restaurants on Main Street. We think it's great. They want to serve alcohol, that's great. We don't have a problem with that. Our school, as a community center, does have a proximity for alcohol use, and the only business within that proximity is the Royal India. And we sat down with Emmanuel, the business owner of that restaurant. He can go get his alcohol license if he wants to, because he was an established restaurant, according to the Alcoholic Beverage Control Act of Utah. If a community center locates thereafter, he can go get his variance, and he can have a restaurant that serves alcohol there. So the other thing I'd like to talk about that for restaurants is that Dan White, the building owner, has had 4 restaurants approach him to possibly use this building as a restaurant. 3 of them wanted to buy it. They all looked at it. It's too big, too much to take on, not well suited for a restaurant, and they walked away. The other one, the 4th one, wanted to rent it. Dan doesn't want to rent the building. He wants to sell the building. And the gentleman that wanted to rent it, according to Dan, only wanted to pay half the price. So, as evidenced by the market, this building isn't well suited for a restaurant. So as Chad said, you guys have done a great study. This Brooks International came in and said you've got a lot of retail already on Main Street. What you need is restaurants. But if this building isn't suited for a restaurant, and you have a lot of retail, wouldn't it make sense for the city to have a small private school, fits in with your mixed use, will create a draw to your downtown, will then frequent your businesses that are already there, frequent your restaurants that are already there, making them viable. Well, they're viable already, but increasing their business to the point where other restaurants will want to come. They'll want to be where the action is. They'll want to be where the people are. So let us be an anchor. Let us help you attract those customers. The last thing I just want to say is that this text amendment is a minor text amendment. It's within your power to do that. We do fit in the zone. We are that mixed use. We are that vision. We are what you are looking for. And we can help to drive customers to your downtown. But denying this is a big deal for the students, the parents, and the families that are behind me. Some of our most vulnerable students that we have are also the most location sensitive. Either don't have the ability or the means to travel great distances. Some of the parents that we have do, and they are already. But those that we're trying to protect the most, those most vulnerable, are location sensitive. Let's have Bountiful be where this academy is housed. Thank you for your time.
So one question before you leave there is, have you looked at other options in Bountiful? It's just a question.
Yeah.
Other than the White House.
Yeah, lots. Extensively for months and months.
I thought so.
Yeah, of course. We've done our due diligence. This isn't the first thing that popped up and we're just going to go for it.
Right.
This has some unique characteristics to this building. There's so many things that we have to look at. And even Chad and Gary, when we spoke to them, like, hey, there's a great big building over by the Mandarin, go look at this building. And we did. And it's great. There's a lot of space. There's 20,000 square feet, not a single window. That's a big deal. We don't want to warehouse children. We want them to have sunlight. They want them to have all these things. There's a ton of things that we have to look at. One of the other things that Chad, brought up was in his staff report, which hopefully you read. He says, 75% of the city is zoned for private schools already. Those are residential zones. There aren't buildings in those residential zones that will accommodate a private school like this building will. And at the Planning Commission meeting, we talked about that. If 75% or 79% of the city is zoned for private schools, the Planning Commission can only think of one private school that was located in a residential zone. That was St. Olaf's. So if you have this vast amount of property or land in your city that's already zoned for private schools, and the Planning Commission can only think of one, what's the likelihood that if you allow this small amendment to the text of the zoning and allow us on Main Street, that all of a sudden this flood of private schools is going to come in and inundate your Main Street? I just think that the impact to Main Street that Chad's brought up is going to be negligible. But we have a lot of positive things that we bring to the table. We would like to do that.
Thank you. Just before you leave, I know it's a little unusual, but I just want to make sure that I think this has been very valuable for us. I just want to make sure that the council, if they have any questions for you, that you're allowed to
Would that be okay?
Ask them. Yes.
So I have a question about the property over by the Mandarin. Couldn't you easily do everything that you're suggesting and then do tenant improvements to do the windows in that spot?
No, there's already existing tenants on both sides. So we could punch out maybe a window in the back. The front has a window and an immediate wall. There's no way that I can put windows and get that many classrooms. It's not going to work that way.
Anyone else with a question?
Mayor, could I ask a question? Could you go a little detail on these?
Yeah, sorry, I was trying to get done in 3 minutes.
I know. Well, we've been way past 3 minutes, but but this was valuable to hear what you had to say.
I'm happy to answer all your questions.
We
I've got lots
appreciate
of
it.
things that
I don't know that we have time to do the architecture, but
Okay, so let me look at which ones are here. Okay, so if you can see.
That's me.
okay.
Okay, you sit back.
I guess you're not supposed to ask that question. I think Gary's doing that. There's a buzzer on you. Yeah, there you go.
I touch it and it goes great.
All right here. These two boards right here show the existing retail. This is the main floor of both the White House clothing store and the White House reception center currently. This is our proposed changes. If you want to. So if you look here, this is what we propose to do to build out classrooms. I have some smaller ones I can pass around.
No, that's good.
Okay, so you can see that the build out for those classrooms is for what our architect has done. So let me talk a little bit about that. Whenever we say we're a school, people think, oh, you've got 30 kids in a classroom and these are tiny classrooms, and that's just not the way we work. Our largest classroom last year, largest class, was 10 students to 1 teacher. So when we're looking at building out this building, we're building it out with rooms that are similar to professional offices. They're 285 to about 385 square feet. So we're not going into this building and turning it into something that's so different than what's already on Main Street that it can only ever be used for a school. In the event that we grow out of this building and we need to go find somewhere bigger to go, now we're going to maintain the entire first floor as is. There's not going to be any structural changes there. And the second floor is built out now with offices that can be rented for office suites. So this building, we're not coming in and trying to change it all and make it all different. We're thinking of the future. We're long-term. We have a vision for what we want to do, but we want to leave your Main Street intact in case we grow out of that. So
Thank you. Are there any other questions? If not, we'll let you sit. Thank you very much.
Ask me any more questions. It's
Thank
fine.
you.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks for your presentation.
Thank you. Are there any others that would like to take 3 minutes or less? Sure. Thanks.
Hello, my name is Caleb Wood, and I live in Bountiful, Utah. And I'm a student from Liberty Hills Academy, and I just wanted to say to this council that Liberty Hills Academy is a great school, and I would recommend it being at the White House because it is a very kind and clean school, and I've made a lot of friends there. Thank you again for this privilege for getting to speak to you today.
Thank you.
My name's Natalie Jackson. I live in West Bountiful. I just want to point out that it's not all about the money. We've talked a lot about money today, and a lot of the benefits that the community can see from allowing this school into the White House can't be measured. The basic morals that are emphasized in Word and Example at Liberty Hills are producing good, industrious, service-oriented, and law-abiding people. That is very important to all of the citizens here. Here's one example. My son is in 10th grade, 15 years old. This summer, after being inspired with his teachers the last few years, he chose to create a service group so that he could spend his summer doing meaningful things. He's always on the lookout for things he can do with no benefit to himself, just to help others. This isn't something that a typical publicly educated child would come up with on their own at age 15. They've served here in Bountiful and every other places, and they welcome various ages into their group. That's one of the things I love about the school is there's no discrimination based on age. They all take care of each other. Liberty Hills Academy is educating a lot of children whose needs haven't been met from the public school system. If the kids aren't able to go to Liberty Hills, which some of them, if it's moved out of Bountiful, will not be able to continue there, they're going to be shuffled back to either homeschooling or the public school system. They will become an additional drain on the public school system. A lot of the kids at the school have special needs, and that's going to have to be absorbed there. I don't know if you're aware of this, but when a child is not educated through the public school system, the money for that child isn't taken with them wherever they choose to go, homeschooled or private schooled or whatever. That money stays in the public school system. So that increases the amount of money per child in the public school system when other children come out. I think that's basically it, but especially I'd like you to notice that it's not just about the money. This will have a very literal, profound effect on the education, the emotional status of a lot of these children if they end up not being able to continue at the school they're succeeding at. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor?
Okay.
Can I make a comment?
Yes.
I'm assuming you are Natalie J. of email fame. So I just wanted to say to the dozen of you or so who emailed, I appreciated the kindness of your emails, and we do read those. So thanks for sending those.
Okay.
My name
name is Peter Cannon. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you. I'd like to address an area of Liberty Hills Academy that hasn't been addressed much in any of the discussions, but I think because we are human beings, many of us have strong spiritual feelings. I need to emphasize for you. Liberty Hills Academy is an LDS-based private school. It's very religious. I have served this last year as its biology teacher. There is nothing like teaching biology and religion in the same class. There is nothing like that anywhere in our community. And so I just want you to know how that feels, but I also want you to think about the idea. Well, let me stop for a second and say, I'm a retired Army officer. I spent 21 years in our country's service. And I'm really grateful to be back in Utah. I was born in Salt Lake City. My family's all from this area. And I always dreamed that one day I might return to the land bountiful. And here I am. Here I am. And it's exciting to me that we have an opportunity to provide this powerful spiritual influence right here in the land bountiful. Now, not everybody are LDS, but to me it's a big deal. And maybe to many other people in Bountiful, it's a big deal. It would break my heart if the leaders of the land Bountiful turned away a private school teaching LDS principles. It would break my heart. And I just want you to be sure to fully consider that as you think about this possibility. It would not be right for Bountiful to turn away this school and force us to have to go to another city. We don't want to do that. This is where we belong. This is where we will serve best. This is where your people will benefit. And I just hope you'll keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Perfect.
I would just like to, my name's Tiffany Hess, and I'm an assistant principal at the school. And I would like to just briefly emphasize the unique nature of the White House building and the White House clothing store. It's going to take a special buyer to purchase this building. It has the ballroom downstairs, and then it has the upstairs area, and the second floor area of the reception center. The bathrooms are over the clothing store. And the electrical and the water and the air conditioning are all tied up together. And so I think it would be a good thing for the city that whichever buyer that you have, that their plan is to purchase that whole, the clothing center and the reception center.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Gary Nelson, Bountiful. One quick thing. I didn't know this was going to be talked about tonight. I was involved with the Da Vinci Academy founding and in a charter school, not the same thing, but it was a tremendous asset to downtown Ogden, going from about 250 students to over 2,500 students now. Great economic development from that. Two things. I don't know, has the seismic, because schools have a different standard to meet for seismic, has it met the seismic? Then I would say it'd be great for Bountiful.
Thank you. Okay, with that final word, we will close the public hearing. Thank you all for your great respect and your knowledge of what you're doing. Thank you. Any questions, again, from any of the council before we proceed? If not, I will look for a motion on our number 8 on our agenda concerning the private school.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the zoning text amendment to section 14-7-107 of the Bountiful City Code to allow for private schools in the downtown zone.
I'll second.
Is there any further discussion?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd like to hear from our planning commission, or our planning director. Actually, I'd like to hear from our planning commissioner too, Mr. Bell, and from our city manager on what they see as potential issues that may not have been covered in this meeting that need to be vetted or aired or discussed now. Frankly, I haven't made up my mind. Chad, talk to us.
What specific questions can I answer for you? I'd be happy to do that.
Are we going to have a flood of schools come downtown? I mean, I want everybody to understand that Bountiful, and I appreciated the email, although it was way too long, but somebody's husband was a mayor somewhere in the fastest growing city in Utah. So we're not the fastest growing city in Utah. We have nothing to grow in. So we really do have to jealously guard everything we've got, contrary to what maybe the common sense would tell you. That's why I'm undecided. I mean, we really do have such a limited amount of commercial property available to us that I think we have to be careful with it. And I'm not trying to tip my hand. I really don't know what I'm going to vote. But that situation is so different from what we have here. I want you to understand that that's why this is an issue, I think, or such a big issue, is because we really do have such a limited supply of that kind of property available. So
yeah, maybe I'm going to ask Paul. Would you put Google Earth up on the screen? We've got the technology issue resolved to his computer.
Oh, one other thing, I just want to say to you, somebody said that Chad was just trying to make us all alcoholics and bring liquor to Main Street. Chad has never voiced in any meeting or led any discussion with, we've got to bring more liquor to Main Street. So,
like he barely made it to city council.
Yeah. So let's put that idea to bed too, for now.
I used to have to clean the rotten grain out of my dad's feed store. That's about as close to alcohol as I've ever got.
Smell sharp.
Yeah. So we've got the zoning map up there. Thanks, Paul. You know, just from a broad policy perspective, again, it's really tempting to look at one use when we have these discussions, one property. It's really tempting to look at current uses. It's really tempting to say, well, we know what's there now. We know that we've got a restaurant a couple of doors down. We know that we've got these existing buildings in this location. But in making these policy decisions, we have to look at the long-term impacts. We don't know what's going to happen. There's potential for buildings to be removed. We're going to see that in the next Planning Commission meeting. There's an application for a building to be removed and replaced with a 12-unit multifamily development. So things change. So we have to look at the long-term consequences of these decisions. I think you hit it on the head. If Paul was to zoom out, Bountiful's has Richard said it, we have limited commercial space. We just do. We don't have the freeway frontage that our neighbors have. We don't have that many opportunities for that tax base, and that's been what's driven a lot of our policy discussions about downtown. Our discussions, the direction that we've received from this council and previous councils is that we'd like to have a vibrant commercial district in our downtown. That's what we've been directed to do, is to try to create this vibrant commercial district. We've sought out expert help from folks that have looked at these things for many years, that have conducted surveys to try to see what elements we need to bring into our downtown. We're not suggesting that the White House is the ideal location for a restaurant. May not be, but we are suggesting that this decision will impact the ability for someone potentially to locate a restaurant or to obtain an alcohol license. In order to be grandfathered in, should the Indian restaurant want a license, they would have to have that established before the school use moved in. They have to have the license, the alcohol license, not just be a restaurant. They have to have their alcohol license established before that happens. Not saying that couldn't happen, but again, we've got to look at outside of existing conditions. We know what's there now, but we don't know what could potentially be there, and a lot of this requires some patience. And I'm trying to think of the example that maybe Gary can share some of those examples of that we talked about of situations where patience has been rewarded in some of these land use issues. Now, again, I said it before, you're the legislative body of the city. You're the duly elected representatives. If you want to change that direction, that's okay. But understand that our analysis of this and our staff report is based on direction we received from you, from past councils through the downtown planning documents. One other thing that we have to look at, this is a hard thing to say because, again, it's tempting to look at existing uses, but we're establishing that potentially a school could go into this building. Once we've established the use, and Paul, you go back to the downtown, once we change that use, any property could be, potentially have a school use established. That would become an allowed use downtown. And we have to look at what could happen. Now we don't anticipate there'll be a run on private schools in the next 6 months, but we also feel that it is important to remember that it's not a question about whether Bountiful wants a private school or not. We have many properties that are zoned for establishment of a private school. Paul doesn't have the file, but I had a file that I showed to the Planning Commission that showed it's about 80% of the city is currently zoned for private school. Now, we understand there's not a building that's already built like the White House on those properties. Some of that would require that someone would build a new building or purchase properties and construct, but it's not an issue of whether or not we think the use is a good use. We actually have many properties where a private school could be established with a conditional use permit, which means it's an allowed use. So again, it's not a question of whether or not we feel the use is appropriate. The use has been zoned for 80% of the properties in Bountiful for establishment of a private school. So again, I think we've gone through a lot of these things, and your staff report contains a detailed discussion of those things. But again, we have a limited commodity of commercial ground. We recognized even in our last planning process, you spent 2 years going through architectural standards, and one of the things we kept coming back to was we've got to preserve. As you know, there are folks. Multifamily is what the market wants us to build right now. That's what everyone is pushing us, is to build multifamily. That's fine, but we recognized that with that push, we needed to preserve that Main Street frontage for commercial use. We said specifically in our code, you can't take those residential uses all the way to the ground floor. You've got to maintain commercial use, which is, again, a reflection of that policy direction we've received from you to maintain our limited stock. We don't have unlimited stock of commercial ground in Bountiful. Our limited stock of commercially zoned properties for use as commercial uses. Gary, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I don't know if you want to hear from Jesse first or not.
Hey, Gary, just a question before we move on. Mm-hmm. So in a motion, let's say that the motion was that that we would amend this and allow this. Could the motion also include that bottom floor must be used for commercial? Is that possible? No? Okay.
So I wanted to just kind of bring something to the forefront. I met with Tiffany and with Peter the other day to have a discussion about their desire to have Liberty Hills occupy the White House. And one of the things that I'm going to do right now is put on a little bit of my old, kind of old, I used to be the director of the Business Resource Center for Zions Bank. And so a lot of times what I would do is I would mentor businesses to help them set up in various ways, whether it was to expand or set up new businesses. And I just wanted to kind of take a look at this from the long-term perspective. The challenge for us, as Chad's already enumerated the fact that we have limited space for commercial, absolutely, but also the practicality of setting up a business like this where you have really dense, a lot of people dropping off at the same time, a lot of people taking off at the same time. This is all happening during the day when you also have other businesses going on and everything else. I think the challenge for any business is to make sure that they can, that they have enough revenue and that they have the ability to pay their bills and to be able to expand. The way I see this school is that it has opportunities in other locations that as a commercial business doesn't. And that to me is ultimately the bottom line. If you have the ability to go in another location and do what you want to do, I recognize that there are inherent challenges in existing buildings, but they can be modified or at least amended or fixed. Or there's other areas that can be taken, that can have some other types of build out that could hopefully help you to establish what you want to do. Because I get what you want to do, and I totally understand it, and this is what I told them the other day. I think ultimately, from my perspective, I have to look at how this is going to work long term, and what is our Main Street going to look like, and what are our other Main Street businesses that are in place, not just today, but also tomorrow. And I ultimately think we still need to save this commercial space in a fashion other than a school, and I indicated as much to them. And I recognize that you guys want to have this as an opportunity because the White House is willing to work with you, they're willing to do these types of things. But perhaps there are other areas where you could also pursue it, that you have other landlords who would be equally willing to work with you, or at least try to look at something from a long-term perspective. When businesses are setting up near each other, they do have a tendency to do the like-to-like type of businesses. And schools just have a different mindset. I understand where you guys are at. Again, I know I feel like I need to keep saying this, but you want to be able to draw people in and keep them there. And that's what businesses are looking to do ultimately. It's a fundamental difference than a business model for a school. And that's why I explained that to Tiffany and to Peter, and we took a really long time to discuss all of the elements that she felt would be really important for me to understand, and I feel like I do understand. And I understand that this is also a passionate issue. I think somebody someone who just said something to the effect of it's not all about the money. And I agree. Having these types of things in our cities are inherently valuable. But we also want to encourage our commercial base as well. So I just wanted to say that. And I just wanted to say thank you for taking the time to explain it to me. I really appreciated that opportunity. So thank you.
Thank you.
So,
any other comments? Yes,
yeah,
please.
Question.
You need to move.
I didn't move.
Chris, I'm going to wait. I'm still going to ask my question. If we can restrict multifamily projects to commercial on the main level and housing above, why can't we provide the same restriction and opportunity for other uses for the upper floors and restrict the main level to commercial?
We've passed some standards that require that in our downtown. There are certain building standards that go with that as well. So that's part of the consideration. Potentially, one of the things that we want to be careful about is that would commit somebody to. That would. We're making long-term decisions for that area and that building, and it would limit opportunities potentially for someone to expand downstairs or to use the space. I know that there's been discussion about using that downstairs for recreation space for the students. If we said this has to be commercial, that would take that opportunity away. So again, there's operational considerations that would need to be taken into account.
Was that discussed in Planning Commission?
We didn't have that discussion in Planning Commission.
Mr. Mayor, did you still want me to?
Yes, please, Gary.
Richard, did you want me to?
Please, Gary.
Yeah.
Okay. I have a couple of thoughts. The first, with regards to the commitment to hold receptions that would be taxable and that would provide activity. The problem is once it's permitted use, we can't force that. We can't require that. It sounds good, and they may try, but there's no guarantee. And it's up to their goodwill. And I have concerns that if a dedicated business that was there for years for that purpose ultimately went out of business, that a school will do it better without a kitchen. I think it's unlikely. I'm just being honest. And we've experienced the same thing here in City Hall. There are many problems with opening up your building to uses for which it's not designed. The first is staffing. Somebody has to be there to open the building, to close the building. Somebody has to be there to respond to complaints. As soon as that goes bad, it's very easy at that point to say, well, we don't want to do it anymore. The second is that we also happen to know, because of the research we did for the new City Hall, what a lot of the demand for these uses are, and it's not people that want to pay a lot of money for a space or for reception space. They want it for free to be able to meet for things like Daughters of the Utah Pioneer, or it's community space, not reception space, that they want to use it for. So I don't think the market exists like it's being purported, or that the business is really going to support that kind of a use, especially without a kitchen. There's no kitchen there anymore. The use pattern of the building, of that use, is not consistent with economic development. They're dropping off students before any businesses are open. They're closing their doors at 2 or 3 in the afternoon. And anybody that lives by a school knows, especially an elementary or primary secondary school, that 90% of the time those properties are vacant once the school doors close. They also know that people don't stay. They pick up their kids, they have other places to go and other things to do. It's not a critique on the school. That is what schools are. But it's not consistent with the kind of activity that we're looking for downtown. And if you look at any secondary, and that's just during the school year. I don't know if the academy's a year-round school, but 3 months of the year you don't even have school. So that's a concern. And then the final is anecdotal. When I was city manager in West Point, can you go to this now? I think we can bring this up. There was an undeveloped commercial area in West Point on 2000 West and 200 North. It was a farm, and it was owned by Gary Wright, who had worked for years with the city to try and develop that property. Zoom way out if you can. You can see the farm property there. That's the intersection I'm talking about. Chad was in West Point at this time too, as a matter of fact. When I first came to West Point, Gary Wright came to and met with me and the mayor. And he said, the current conditions are that nothing will ever come here. I can't get a grocery store to locate here. I can't get anything but homes. You need to rezone this, because I'm telling you that nothing will come here anymore. And we talked to him, we said no. We said we have very limited space for commercial development in West Point, which is true. And we are going to hold out. We're going to wait. And he said, well, nothing's ever going to happen. Well, lo and behold, 5 years later, there's a Smith's Marketplace there. There's a Cafe Rio coming in. There's a Del Taco there. It's about preserving the long-term vision for what you have. And I know that the council is tempted to fill the building, and especially to fill one with a good use. Nobody's disputing that Liberty Hills is not a good school. The problem is it's not a good use for that location. It's unlikely to provide the economic development benefits we want. It's unlikely to drive the patterns that we want to see there. And with economic development, we just simply, if we can, need to be patient. We need to think of the long view. And those are the reasons that staff, and those are the same reasons that we shared with the good folks of Liberty Hills when they came. This isn't anything new that they haven't heard, other than maybe my anecdote about West Point. Those are the concerns. But again, this is a policy decision, and if your policy direction changes, I think you know, we'll just move forward. So.
As soon as he had a question, he gave his spiel all over again. I think it's only fair that they should be able to address some of those issues that have now been brought up, because there are some other points that are now being glossed over.
I'll ask the council how they feel about that.
Well, first of all, may I?
Please.
It's not a debate. I mean, everybody that wanted to speak was able to speak.
No, they were not. No, you shut it down.
Really?
Yes, there were more than that.
Oh. Did I
No,
see people lining
I
up to
didn't
speak?
see anyone else speaking
We
after
waited and
we already closed
So-
it.
Made a good point about addressing the issues that have just been brought up, and that, to be fair, I would love that opportunity.
Yeah. Secondly, I want to address another thing that was discussed, and that is that in the 2009 planning document, it mentions that schools are a use for downtown. Chad, why don't you talk about that for a minute? I wouldn't clap yet.
Clap yet.
Because I was on that steering committee and I voted on that document, and I want to hear what Chad has to say about it first.
In terms of that being listed as a use?
Yeah.
I need to pull that up because that's been brought up before, and I need to, it's not a super long document. I might have to have my good buddy Paul pull that up off the city website. Can I come over and drive for a minute?
Sure. We have it.
If we could borrow the document.
she's got the document right there.
She'll trade you the document for another 5 minutes.
I'll just read it.
Yeah.
That'd be
sounds
great.
good.
Thanks, Chad.
So the issue identified, it says insufficient daytime customers. Bountiful residents want a variety of retail and restaurant experiences on Main Street. However, there are currently insufficient daytime customers in the area to support these businesses. The major sources of daytime population in Bountiful include professional office buildings, medical buildings, retirement communities, schools, and government buildings. I'm going to keep going though. One of the key ways to enhance downtown Bountiful is to fill the activity holes with residences and professional offices, which will in turn support the expansion of retail shops and restaurants. As we discussed previously, the challenge is in relocating the non-contributing businesses to other sites within their trade area in such a way that it doesn't negatively impact businesses, which in turn would create opportunities for new office and residential uses downtown. I just wanted to read that in context. It talks about, we're talking about existing conditions versus what the policy document is aiming for. So that second paragraph is, again, looking at the expansion of retail shops and restaurants. That's the policy direction that we've received through this document, is that we need to fill those, I think it calls it activity holes with those types of uses. And it goes on later on to talk about insufficient dining, entertainment, and shopping opportunities. So again, you got to take it kind of in context. We don't have any goal and actions that says recruit private schools into our downtown.
So Chad, can I take a little license here?
Richard, absolutely.
If I were to make the statement that schools are listed there as what was currently providing some traffic downtown in Bountiful, and that businesses, I know what the discussion was at the time, and the businesses might be better suited to try to cater to some of those folks that were already there from the offices and from the school. At the time, we had the University of Utah Extension and Stoker School, and sadly, because of online courses, their enrollment declined drastically from the time this document was printed until they just didn't renew a lease and they left. So the school was not listed as something that we hoped to draw downtown. The school was listed as what was currently providing some of the traffic downtown, and that the businesses downtown might be well suited to cater to. It wasn't the end goal, it was what the current situation was at the time. So when you say that schools were listed in the document, a school was absolutely listed in the document and discussed a lot, because there weren't a lot of downtown businesses that were catering to the U of U students that were coming down at the time. So is that out of line?
That's what it's talking about, is, it brings up an issue, it identifies what those current uses were, and then it gives policy guidance that says what we'd like to have is additional retail shops and restaurants.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any further discussions or questions? as we said, you know, we've closed the public hearing, and I appreciate that there's now more wants to be said. We do have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
I know you've heard from me way too much, but I want to just ask the council if there's an appetite to looking at sending this back to the Planning Commission for the idea of mandating main floor commercial and allowing school use on the upper floors, or if there's no appetite for that and we just want to vote yay or nay on the text amendment as it is.
Can I just address that?
Please.
I mean, you have a great, conceptually, it sounds like a really logical way to kind of like multi-use a building. From a practical perspective, I think that there could be some considerations you'd want to make for any business that's going to go in on that main level as to what's up above them and what are the uses. Is it going to cause disruption? Because of course, you know, people walk on ceilings and all of those other types of elements. Sometimes it wouldn't matter and sometimes it would. And I think that from the perception of if I'm a commercial entity and I want to move in and I want to establish a business, I want to know who all is around me, including above me. And for some commercial building or businesses, it could be compatible, but for many it could not. Specifically, if you have parking issues that result, or if you have other traffic flow issues that you feel like your commercial space is being impeded because you can't have access during certain times when the school is inordinately busy because they have drop off or pick up or whatever. Those are things that I think you would want to factor in. If I were going to set up a business, I think that would be something I would consider. I'm not saying that I think it's totally incompatible, because I get where you're going. I just don't see it being, in the strictest of senses, very compatible. Let's just use an example. What if I am a restaurant that decides to open up and I apply for a liquor license? How would that work? And I'm not saying, I'm not saying that that's a bad thing in either perspective. I'm just saying that that is a consideration that people take into consideration when they're going to set up a business. So.
I'd be open to looking at that option. Also, when I think about this, I think about the Creative Arts Academy and what a asset they are to the community. And they have drop-off and pick-up times, and they have, it's for children, it's for instruction, it's during the day. So in my mind, it's kind of a similar use. The kids are coming, being dropped off, being picked up, and they're coming and going.
But they're a private business.
Right.
So they generate tax. Yeah.
Yeah. But
they pay taxes.
Yeah, I see them as an asset in the same way. They're people coming into the downtown and bringing their kids and providing vitality.
Well, at this point, we still have a motion.
May I make a comment why I seconded, Mayor, why I seconded it? By profession, I'm a pediatric dentist. I see lots of children every single day. And there are a lot of children that need a special kind of school. And I have struggled with this and struggled with this. This is probably, in the 7 months I've been on the council, I've had more sleepless nights over this than anything. Trying to weigh economics against children. I think sometimes we might have to step back and say, maybe our children are a little more important than a few bucks that we make for the city. Maybe we should look at stepping up and looking at our kids. So that's why I seconded the motion, and I think this is an opportunity, a wonderful opportunity to weigh, as I look at the White House, that is the perfect place for a school. Thank you.
Do I have any other questions or comments before we vote on the motion that Kendall has placed?
Can I make a substitute motion?
Yes, you can.
Or
I think
no?
they can make a substitute motion. It is legal. Yep. And that will
Or
take,
do we want to
no, the substitute motion will take precedence over the first motion.
So what I would like to do is I would like to make a substitute motion that we uphold the Planning Commission's vote of denying the school the text amendment change in order to do a zoning change to section 14-7-103 of our code. So in other words, to not allow private schools in the downtown.
Don't we have to vote on the motion that we already had?
No.
On the...
No.
If there's a substitute motion that is seconded, you then vote on that first. If that fails, then it goes back to the first.
And it goes back to the first. Is there a second on the motion by Beth?
There is a second.
Okay, any further discussion? On this second motion presented by Beth, all in favor?
Aye.
Is that a roll call vote? Richard?
I have not voted yet.
Okay. John Mark?
Why don't you call for the nays first?
No, I'm asking you.
Oh, call for the nays.
The nays?
Nay.
Nay. So on a roll call vote, we have 2 nays and 2 yeses. And we're back to a 2-2 vote.
So the question is, are you going to vote or are you going to abstain?
I'm going to ask a question when I get a chance. So I'm going to abstain there. Unless the mayor gets to decide in a tie vote. He can do that, right?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, you get to decide if you want to. But I'd rather ask a question of Ms. Thompson.
Okay, well, please.
Ms. Thompson, are you agreeable, is your organization agreeable to the idea of possibly having mandated commercial on the main level of your building?
We already have that as an option.
I know that you have it as an option. What if we turn into big, bad, ugly city leaders and say it has to be that way?
Well, on a matter of principle, I don't think it's wise for a city to say we don't want to do something because we can't mandate you to do it.
I don't know what that means.
Okay?
Explain it to the simpleton. You're an educator.
Me too.
Teach me.
No, what I'm trying to say is we seem to be getting penalized for something because you say you can't do it, you can't hold receptions, it's not going to work. And we're not going to do that unless we can mandate, unless you can guarantee or we can regulate or restrict that.
We don't want to regulate what you do there, but we're already requiring folks who build homes in the downtown area on Main Street and some distance off to put commercial on the main level.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So of the 2 buildings that we're buying, the storefront and a large portion of that is already being maintained as commercial. We want the same thing too. We want to preserve the businesses that are down there. But as Chad brought up, with the study that was done, commercial wasn't what was lacking on Main Street. You have an abundance of commercial on Main Street. In fact, they applauded you and said you've done a great job.
No, they didn't.
They didn't. Retail.
No, they didn't. That's not
what Chad told me.
the study said.
Then
The study.
that's what the information I was given.
No, that's just. Go ahead.
What I said was that we were happy to find out that we had more retail than we thought. That there was no
grading.
Yeah, no grading or anything. So, yep.
And I guess the other thing I would like to say too is that right across the street is your Bountiful Davis Art Center. It's also a nonprofit. It also provides intrinsic value to the community. And I'll read just straight from their website. It says, in 2015, Bountiful City graciously remains the Art Center's largest supporter and most enthusiastic cheerleader, providing the beautiful facility which it now is BDAC's permanent home. It goes on to say at the end of their about them, BDAC is having a positive economic as well as a cultural impact on Davis County. BDAC's beautiful rehabilitated historic facility on Bountiful's Main Street is a prime example of creative redevelopment in the downtown area. The presence of an art center has helped to revitalize Main Street by drawing thousands of new visitors and adding an important new anchor to the north end. These guests also frequent the area's businesses and restaurants, spurring shopping and dining in the area and increased interest in the delightful goods and services sold on Main Street. How are we different? How much did Bountiful City spend of taxpayers' money to purchase that building? How much tax revenue is foregone because they occupy that building? And how much did Bountiful City donate? And don't get me wrong, I think it's a fantastic thing. I don't have a problem with it. I have a problem with the discrepancy of the treatment of the storefront on that side of the street, directly across the street now. The onus is put on us to put in commercial, create this nightlife, do all of these things. Tell me the difference.
I was just exploring options, trying to be able to come up with a compromise that would allow
I
you there.
recognize that, and I appreciate that. And we tried to put all sorts of plans together. I tried to go and talk to Chad again this last week. What are some solutions we can come up with together? What I got was, let the council decide, and then we'll decide whether we're going to work with you or not. So we came up with these things on our own, but again, I don't know, are we amenable to that? Yeah, we would like to be in the building. We could do that. That's just a lot of onerous to put on one organization in one building when directly across the street.
So, you know what that leads me to say is that you really should locate in a different location, simply because we do want to have a greater onus onto the main street because of that reason. We're trying to help long-term benefit all of these different types of businesses. And so that's why we're taking such a hard look at this. I mean, to know that there are other locations within the city that you could locate to, I recognize they're not in your ideal, but
they're also not zoned. They have identical zoning language as downtown preschool.
But they're not on Main Street.
Yeah, Montessori, that's a block off Main Street in commercial.
They're
Same
not on
exact
Main Street.
zoning.
Montessori is actually a private, but yeah. Yeah.
So are we. What's the difference?
So I understand what you're saying, but it's not on Main Street.
But the zoning language is identical to Main Street as it is in that zone. So why the discrepancy between downtown?
It's not on Main Street.
But
that's the reason.
We're here for a text amendment to the zoning.
Yeah, I understand.
Right?
I think
But
our discussion now is.
And
I
the other
understand.
building that you talked
Thank
about
you.
is also not zoned for that. So this 80%, there's no buildings there. All the buildings we're looking at are not zoned. They're zoned identical to what downtown is.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Higginson. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
Richard.
Appreciate you answering the questions
And
and
Richard.
helping educate me.
And Richard.
Yeah.
And a roll call vote. Do you have a final vote?
What motion am I voting on?
You're on the substitute motion. That is to deny.
To uphold the planning commission.
To uphold the planning commission's vote.
Of deny.
Yep, and that was by Beth and seconded by John Mark Knight.
Nay. Don't do that.
Well, that was an interesting face.
Public outbursts in meetings are, whether they like what I say or don't like what I say, are less than desirable. So, thank you, but thank you, no. Ready for another motion?
We have a motion on the table that now needs to be voted on.
Which one's that?
That's the original motion to amend the code to add the language.
Aye.
Do I have a motion though?
It was already
Oh, it
done.
was already done?
Now you just call for the vote.
All those in favor?
Wait a minute, what
We're voting on
are we voting on?
the original motion.
The original motion.
Kendall made and Chris seconded.
Okay, thank you.
Aye.
Nay.
Nay.
Aye.
Aye.
That motion passes.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
just as a procedural item, this does need to be passed by ordinance, so we would like to have you, as part of your decision tonight, make that, contingent on us bringing an ordinance back to your next meeting for approval. Not changing the vote, but just bringing back an official ordinance that would then make that change.
Okay.
And with a motion?
Can we do that? I mean, we don't have a number right now, right?
No, we'll need to prepare the ordinance and bring it back to you.
So moved as recommended by staff.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Mr. Mayor, can I make one more comment, even though I'm way over
We
the
love,
limit
no,
tonight?
no, we love it. We want a long night. My wife will make me something when I get home.
Please don't interpret any of the votes tonight and any of the discussion tonight as judgment of or endorsement of or anything else. I mean, we're trying to make long-term decisions here that are going to affect those properties for way longer than Liberty's going to be there. So these folks are good folks that even voted against you, and I promise they're nice people. They're just, honestly, it's just a policy discussion that shouldn't have other heavy things attached to it. So, thank you.
Hey, with that, Richard, I would say, really, in 5 years, almost 5 years for me, I think this was one of the most interesting debates, one of the most interesting situations that we've had. Yeah. I really feel that way. You've all been very
vocal. Vocal.
Well, we've had more. Yeah, we've had more, but also very respectful. So we
Mr. City Manager, would you just go over one more time and explain to everybody in the room what the council's decision was and what we're going to do for next council meeting?
So the council approved the text amendment to allow schools in the downtown zone. Staff will return with an ordinance that makes that official. In the meantime, Chad asked for what he did so that the Liberty Hills folks can move forward with assurance that this is going to happen. Correct, Chad?
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, no, it's a requirement now that you stay till the very end. No, I'm just joking.
That's a joke.
It seems like it should have been, though. Okay, we'll let you go.
We don't get a break. There's no rest for the wicked.
I don't know.
Yeah, congratulations. Okay, so the next steps are going to be, what we didn't talk about,
Richard,
is whether this is a permitted or
You're very welcome.
So we're going to talk about that in the ordinance.
I was ready.
If it is a conditional use,
I was.
we've got to hold another public.
How are you going to?
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, Randy.
It's not a yes or no public hearing.
Randy.
We still have a
Can you adjourn the meeting for a minute or something?
Hey, yeah,
We should probably adjourn it.
for 1 minute, we will just have a moment, and then please, if you're leaving, hey, you're welcome. Have a good night. Thank you. We need to resume our city council meeting, so for those of you who are ecstatic,
How much do you
going to
really shop on
Nielsen's for a frozen yogurt, please do it now.
How much do you really shop on Main Street?
That's fine.
Did you buy
I'm not
stuff?
going to run again though, so it's all good.
Statistically, that doesn't.
Hey, thanks for coming
Statistically,
tonight.
that doesn't ever happen.
Absolutely.
But I appreciate your endeavor and your desire to change that. So hopefully, I'm Beth Holbrook. My name should be on the front. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And I appreciate you coming all the way up. It takes a lot of desire to get that going, And for me, it's all policy. So I hope you understand that it's not against anything other than just policy-wise, I just see it differently.
Thanks for being here. Love it.
It's my dad's fault. You should have mentioned that you.
You know what? I know. I was going to say. Okay. I'm sorry.
That's fine. Thank you. Nice.
What did you say?
Thanks, Karen.
I
think Mayor's wife.
Oh, thank you, because I don't think mine is told.
At that time, the vision it was fastest growing population-wise, and they were gobbling it up in little things, kind of like what Bountiful on the east side of Fifth West.
And on Fifth South.
Gobbled up little things
Yep.
when they missed their opportunity.
To plan big. Yeah.
I don't know if I can. They were like the big developers wanted and it's now and
Thank you. Yeah, this
they helped.
I just, hard for me to lose on commercial space.
Great retail center
Space.
now.
They
Yeah.
have that. Before that, they had nothing but gas stations.
I didn't,
Yeah.
I'm a mom.
I was hoping that there was.
Jeez.
Can I have that?
But I think they might. Oh, no, it was great.
And honestly, winning by...
Can your wife?
There's a skunk?
I know that. I still...
Oh my gosh.
I just want you to know that I want to be friends with you.
And I stayed.
Okay, thank you.
Nice to see you too.
Okay.
Now, Phil, you know that.
John, Mark, and if everyone who is, if we could again reassemble here, could I get some attention? I'm the mayor.
Absolutely.
Please do what I ask.
Personally, not sure why you made the
All right.
comments about the league. And
I'm paying attention, thank you. You're the only one.
You said that we shouldn't pay the league.
You're the only one.
$5,000.
Hey, I played golf with
Oh, that
Colson
wasn't
the other
you?
day
Oh,
too.
okay.
He's a pretty good player. Yeah. It was pretty fun. I liked him.
We are?
Okay.
So the break.
Next item.
I'm going to be out of town for a few days.
We are now back in session. Next item, which is item 9. We're halfway through, Richard.
Awesome.
Awesome. So 9.
I can't even order pizzas this late. I'm sorry.
Yes, that's over.
I should have.
Oh my gosh. So that was 8, 9. We're going to turn over to Todd Christensen. Todd, how was your nap?
Wake up, Todd.
Wake up, man. You were in stage 3.
Okay.
So different for me.
Yeah, I'll wake them up when I get home. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. As we look forward to the future renovation of City Hall, the remodel will require that the staff at City Hall be temporarily relocated for a little over a year. And so we've looked into options for relocating the staff and the functions of City Hall. We looked at city-owned buildings, mobile offices, even purchasing commercial property temporarily to use and then sell later, and renting existing office space. One of the options that is now available is at 150 North Main in the Main Street Business Center. It's it's finished commercial offices, and it's got some unique benefits. It's in a good location, central to Bountiful. Good parking situation. We can utilize the location as well as the network that they have to bring in our own city network for our computer systems.
1 second, Todd. Paul, Google Earth. 150 North Main, please. Thanks, Todd.
I'm just
Sorry.
trying this from a different elevation. So no worries. I'm not leaving.
Todd, I just thought you were going to want to relocate to the White House, so this is...
Hey, Gail,
Yeah,
you light me up over there?
Because I drove past there trying to figure out what one.
I thought that was it all. I thought that was what it was all about.
That's what it's all about. I think that's
It's not far from the White House, just across the street and north half a block.
So that's the Conkey building, or law building.
Right.
there.
Right on the corner. Yeah, you're...
Oh, so you're in that building that was the Doug Smith building?
Yeah, we're looking at the bigger, yes, with the blue roof over the entrance.
Hess Travel,
that's
Hess
not
Travel
what-
is in that building.
I'm sorry.
Hey, I didn't think that was 150. I drove past there trying to find it today.
Oh, did you?
yeah.
Oh, that's the address that they've got listed for that is 150 North Main. It's actually got multiple addresses.
Well, it's hidden by the...
There you go.
To match my
Yeah.
personality.
So I was right and wrong.
You were right and wrong. Yeah, you were right. I would say you're right. So that's the place that we're looking at. One of the biggest benefits that I can see is that it's got two different sets of offices that are in close proximity to one another near the entrance of the building. So it's similar to what we have here, where we've got planning and engineering on one side and the utilities and finance on the other side. So it's got the capability of having the two public fronts as you enter. It's smaller than what we have here, significantly. It's under 6,000 square feet. But we expect to be able to fit 26 of the 34 City Hall staff there, and we could potentially fit a few more, depending on how much we squish together.
Kenny probably has room for the others at his place.
Twist the knife.
Sorry.
So in discussion with the landlord of this, the owner Al Hess, through an agent that we've been using, Brandon Wood, he has agreed to lease this to us for 2 years. The typical minimum lease rate for commercial property is 5 years. He's willing to work with us on this. That would be at the market rate of $18 per year. So the two-year lease would give us some additional time for planning, programming, potentially moving in early, doing some of that upfront work to move in. And as you can see, if you multiply the square footage out by the lease rate, which is the going market rate for commercial office space, 2 years, it's $210,708. The money for this will come from the money budgeted for the City Hall renovation project. And there are a couple of minor changes that have been made to the agreement that is in your packet. One of them is a typo on the address, and the other is he was initially willing to let us park 2 vehicles overnight, and we asked that we be able to park 3 vehicles overnight. It's the engineering vehicles that we leave out here, the Jeep and the trucks. And so he's been willing to let us...
Sorry. You pick the ugliest vehicles in the city's fleet to park there overnight, right?
Yeah,
Sorry.
it cuts down on crime.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, so he normally doesn't like the tenants to park overnight, but we put that in the lease to have that capability of parking 3 vehicles overnight.
Nice.
And those are really the only changes, very minor. We will still need to we're still looking into other space and options for the remaining City Hall staff, and then we know we will need some storage space. So, the recommendation.
What about this?
Did you finalize where the city council would meet in the planning commission yet?
City Council, we're most likely looking at the library, the basement of the library for...
Or the White House.
That's excellent.
Stock up on air fresheners, Gary.
Yeah.
Holy cow, we're going to have a whole budget amendment just for that.
Yeah.
So question
Air
for you.
fresheners.
I'm not going to dress up.
Will Mr. Hess provide signage for the city for this price?
No, the signage will be, from what I understand, signage will be something that we'll need to provide.
And how was market rate of $18 a year determined?
That was what our real estate agent
It's the market rate.
told us.
Is it? Is that the rate?
It can be. I don't know the particulars of the building. I'm not going to answer for that, but
The
Are we
space is,
comfortable with that rate? Okay.
Brandon Wood is really good. I'm not.
I like Brandon Wood.
Todd, do you anticipate we could use this building for storage at all, even though during renovation, or?
Gary did.
if so, it will be very limited. We expect it'll be pretty much a full renovation. So most of the storage space would need to be relocated.
Okay. What other, I'm just curious what other options you looked at. What other?
More specifically, in terms of commercial market office space, there's some property at the Renaissance. It was a lot bigger. It would have been more expensive. it would have been nice, but I think the convenience and access for the public would not have been as nearly as good. There's some space down on 500 West, done by Sizzler, that was available. I don't know if it's still available, but there was a lot available down there. It didn't seem like it was as good of a location. There was a little space. It may not have worked very well, but down, you know, by 7-Eleven across the street on 1500 South, just east of 500 West. There's some offices in there.
You're talking about for the overflow, right? Not for the whole
No,
operation.
just for the main body of the staff. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for Todd? Do I have a motion?
City Attorney has looked this over as well, Todd?
Yes.
Be happy to make a motion that we approve the lease agreement as outlined by Todd.
Second?
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Todd.
Thanks for your work.
That is approved.
Very welcome. My pleasure.
Thank you. And let's see.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, we don't have it says a public hearing, but we don't have one on 10 actually. We have an action, but not a public hearing. Chad, is that correct?
Right.
That's correct. So this was incorrectly agendized. It's a change in ownership. We already had the public hearing for this a year ago. That doesn't have to go back through. This was one that was approved for a location variance. That location variance runs with the land, so there's no need for a public hearing. But just to explain the application, this is for a change in ownership. They want to change the name of, I don't even know what it's called now. It's a sushi place. Ichiban Sushi, that's right. To Fat Fish. I remember that one because it sounds cooler. Fat Fish would be, not Pat Fish as it says, that's not the right name, it's Fat Fish. So, again, this is a change in ownership. Our local law requires, and state law requires, anytime we have a change in ownership, you have to reauthorize that liquor license.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve a liquor license for Fat Fish 2 LLC at 295 West, 2600 South, Mr. Son Dang as the owner, as recommended and outlined by staff.
Second, if the motioner will accept 595 as the east-west coordinate.
No, we
in
already
substitute
talked
of
about changing
295.
addresses. Okay, yeah.
Okay.
I'll
Any
take
further
that.
discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm going to abstain.
Okay.
Is Fat Fish sushi? Do you know?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
I don't like to see liquor in restaurants. I'm sorry.
Okay, so
That's okay.
Fine.
That's fine, Chris.
Okay, Alan? Hey, Alan. How are you?
I'm great. I can't express enough how glad I am to be standing before you at this time. And also to bring you one of the easiest agenda items. This is our annual request for approval to continue our software maintenance contract with Tyler Technologies. They base their maintenance rate on the list price of the software, which is about between $500,000 and $600,000. So annually we pay them about 15% of the list price for the maintenance cost. That keeps us up to date with tax rates, W-2 forms, and also an ongoing update for software.
Do you think you're going to be keeping this software program for long term?
We do.
Okay.
One of the
How
criteria...
long have we used it?
We have been using it since 2012. We used the previous version for about 20 years.
Same company?
No, the previous version was New World Systems. Part of the criteria that we had when we were looking at another vendor was the ability to keep going with it, and
Yeah.
they have something called
an
evergreen policy. So any updates they provide, unlike New World Systems, they were dragging us along, and it was going to cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars to get to the new version. That's in the contract, is it won't cost us that. As long as we pay the contract maintenance cost ongoing, they will provide any new software at no extra charge. So we just have to pay the maintenance fee.
Any other questions for our esteemed Ellen?
I'm sure there's some kind of controversy we can discuss.
Oh, yeah.
You said it's so simple, but I'm just, it's making me think there's got to be something.
There's got to be something.
No.
So I'll look for a motion.
Alan, thanks for your work on this. I'd like to move that we approve this software maintenance.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes, and we'll turn the next very quick item over to, the next two quick items over to Paul Rowland.
Okay, quick items. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. We have two subdivision plats in front of you this evening. One is in a single-family zone. It is a subdivision of a single lot into two lots at 111 and 153 South, 300 East. This actually was approved as a subdivision in 2005, but for some reason the owners didn't record the plat, and it is back in front of you again in basically the same configuration. Both lots meet the requirements of the R4 zone in which it is located. The one lot will contain the house which is already on the property and obviously is already served with utilities. The other lot have all the necessary utilities available in the road and overhead, as in the power and cable utilities.
Okay. Any questions for Paul?
There are conditions of approval.
Sorry.
We do want to make sure that the conditions are listed, including number 3, that we don't require bonds when these are a lot split type subdivision. However, when the building permit is issued for that new house, they have to bring up all of the surface improvements to standard at that time. So it would be in the same situation as a new subdivision that had to build new curb, gutter, and sidewalk. This one has to fix all the curb, gutter, and sidewalk that suffered 75 years of deterioration since it was put in.
Okay.
But it comes with favorable recommendation from the Planning Commission.
Any questions? If not, I'll look for a motion.
Move to approve with the 4 conditions outlined.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
There's a second by Beth. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. And back to you, our esteemed engineer.
Yeah, I went to all the trouble to get this, but dang, you're going to look at it.
Okay, good.
Okay, this one is even more simple, but it is a condominium plat, which
you can imagine.
It is a condominium of a new subdivision lot that was just recently approved by the City Council at the 5th West Office Park. If you've been down to Paces Darien recently, you've noticed there is a strip center building across the street and another commercial building that's currently under construction. They want to condominiumize the 8 units of the strip type building that's on the north of the property. This is just a condominium plat for this one lot of the subdivision, hence the name 5th West Flex Office Condominiums. Meets all the requirements of our zoning ordinance and comes with favorable approval from favorable recommendation from the Planning Commission with the conditions listed number 1, 2, and 3.
And it turned out just as pretty as the plans looked.
It looks great.
It's a nice looking building.
It is. Really nice.
Just like the townhomes on 2nd North, by the way. Nice looking buildings. Move to approve.
Any
with the conditions.
A motion?
Second.
Good. Did we have a first? I couldn't hear that.
Me.
Okay, good. And a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Didn't Orbit people build that building?
What's that?
Steve Erickson and Orbit built that building?
It's on his property, but it was Stout Construction that built that building.
Stout built it, but...
But Steve,
Yeah,
Greg,
that's Eric.
it's Greg, right? Or is it Steve?
Steve. But I think there are a whole bunch of them. I mean, I think they all did that. Okay, next item, hold it now. Let's see. Oh, Brock. Oh, Brock, we don't have time.
Okay.
No, I'm just
say
joking.
yes then.
Brock, to you, my friend.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. I come before you for a couple requests. All 3 of them are equipment. The first 2 pieces of equipment that are I'm asking for, or in support of the Parks Department and our services there, and will help us continue on in achieving our goals in maintaining the parks. The first one is a truck. It would be a 4-door crew truck where we have park maintenance supervisors and crews now. It's imperative that we get equipment that will support those crews in their maintenance.
Is that the state bid price?
The $29,607 is the state contract price, and it comes from Young Ford out of Morgan. We did, as you can see in the staff report, we did request a bid from Performance Ford Lincoln and gave them every opportunity to bid the truck, and they came in within $800 of each other, but Young Ford was cheaper. Any questions there?
Nope. You want to present the next, and we'll just do them all at once? Is that okay?
Yeah, that's what, yeah.
Let's do it.
Just wait.
The other one on that for the Parks Department is a mini excavator. For several years now, we have been borrowing equipment from other departments, which puts them in a difficult position when they're trying to get their work done, and we have projects that we've been asked to do, and helps us in maintaining our parks. So that's in an effort to help relieve the other departments in the burden that we place on them when we borrow their equipment. We did, I bid several pieces of equipment, but we came back to the state contract quote from Bountiful Equipment Company for $63,149.63. That is a state contracted price. We looked at other equipment. They both come in more expensive than that. So any questions there?
Move to approve?
Oh, there's one more.
Oh, sorry.
We'll do them all together. Is that
Oh,
okay,
okay.
Kendall?
Yep.
Just one more here.
The third set of equipment that we are requesting is actually for the cemetery, and it's to update their mowers that they use in the cemetery. It's kind of a specialized piece of equipment. The mow deck's out front of the machine rather than underneath. This allows them to get in and around the headstones and allows them to perform the great work that they do there. Because it is a specialized piece of equipment, it is a sole source quote. It comes from Rocky Mountain Turf Equipment, RMT equipment, for the price of $14,500 each. We're requesting two. One, because one piece of machinery is down, and it would cost more to fix that machine than just buy a new one. And they're going to take that piece of machinery in as a trade-in and put the cost of that towards the price of the new one.
Brock, were these three items budgeted for?
They are.
And did they come in under budget?
They are.
Move to approve?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And that also, it passes. And Brock?
Thank you.
Thanks to you, Brock and Gino, for doing such a great job.
Thanks, Brock, for
The cemetery.
Yes, Gino, thank you.
Thank you. Is there a chance next time we can be on the top of the list?
Nope.
No.
Share the pain.
Staff has to suffer just a little bit, yeah.
Fun.
I
know.
Yes.
You've heard enough from me tonight.
It's-
Ed's going to do that. Okay.
Hey, Ed, Mr. Beeler, we're actually glad to have you.
Thank you. Chief has done the heavy lifting today, so he asked me to fill in here at the end, and he's probably tired, and he knows I speak
And he
with
did a
brevity,
great
so
job
we'll-
today, too, by the
Correct.
way. If we don't get a chance to say, that was a wonderful presentation.
So we'll move
Please,
right
Ed.
forward right into ours. We are requesting approval for the purchase of 2 police vehicles. The vehicles are both in our fiscal year budget that we're currently in right now. The vehicles to be purchased are 2 2018 Ford F-150 pickups assigned to the Patrol Division. The pickups will be purchased from Performance Automotive Group, which is a local automotive company here in Bountiful. And that is also on the Utah State contract price of $35,547 a piece for a total amount of $71,094. We're replacing a 2009 Ford F-250 pickup with 110,000 miles and a 2003 Chevy pickup with approximately 101,000 miles. So we respectfully request your approval to purchase these 2 police vehicles in the amount of $71,094. And
Are you trading those
happy to answer any
vehicles in?
questions.
So moved.
Are you trading those
Running
vehicles
right
in?
through it. Sorry,
We
you didn't call
don't
me.
trade them in. We've been selling them.
You're going to sell them?
Correct. And then that money will go back in as a revenue source back into the general fund.
Can I just ask, with these quotes, is that price including tax?
Yes.
Oh, oh,
We're
yeah.
tax exempt,
Okay,
yes.
okay.
We're
Thank
our
you.
worst enemy.
And just keep in mind, these are police, they're police equipped vehicles, so they come with different equipment than a regular, different transmission, brakes, heavier alternators, things that can run all the equipment, so.
They're both EcoBoost vehicles, so better gas mileage.
Thank you.
Second. So I had a motion and a second. And any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No, and so we've got it.
Thank you.
Okay, you've done it. Anything else from staff? If
Yes,
not-
one thing, I'd like to thank Jake for being here tonight.
Hey, Jake,
providing
thank
excellent
you.
legal
Way to go,
backup
Jake.
for the staff.
We appreciate you, Jake.
Thanks for hanging in there.
Yeah,
all the
thanks,
time.
Ray. Yeah, you'll be here every couple of weeks, I'm sure. Same with Ed. So, a motion to dismiss?
Great.
Move to dismiss.
Second?
Thank Chief. Second. Well done.
All in favor?
Aye.
Done. That was, I can see where you just